Chapter 709. His level here is not bad. It's not an exaggeration to say that he's in the top 7. But there aren't many racers here. It's not like New York, where there are dozens or even hundreds of racers in an underground race. The total number of racers here is only about 30. His results are not bad. Probably seeing her boyfriend's embarrassment, Delia George stood up at this time and said to Carmacliff with a smile. Hearing her words, Carmacliff also looked at her. Let me show you from a distance. Little Louis, who just came over, is actually a good driver. His strength is not bad. He can rank in the top 5. But he relies on this thing to make a living. It is normal for his level to be very good. Hearing Carmacliff's words, Delia George also said with a smile, then pointed to the little black man just now. Rely on this thing to make a living? How? Listening to her words, Carmacliff was even more puzzled. In the racing cars there are races. There are at least 2 such races a week, and each time, there are 15 to 16 cars participating. In other words, if you win 2 races a month, you'll earn $3,000. With this money, you'll be able to feed yourself. However, that's not how little Louis makes his money. He mainly gambles on cars. In a one-on-one fight, the winner takes his car. A modified car can be sold for at least $30,000 to $50,000. That's his main source of income. His main source of income is his driving force. Hearing Carmacliff still asking, Baveda Jeandurat also adjusted his mood and said. Hearing his explanation, Carmacliff also nodded with a serious face, feeling that this thing is really exciting. At this moment, suddenly there was a roar, and then several modified cars drove in from the entrance. The most conspicuous of them were the first and the middle car. The first car was an AMG. Although it was an off-road vehicle, it was quite horribly modified. Not only was the steel plate thickened, but the whole car was also made like a hedgehog. If this car was in the apocalypse, it would definitely be a good car. It could kill countless zombies in an instant. But unfortunately, this car was now. If he dared to go out during the day, the police would definitely not be polite to him. The most conspicuous car in the middle was a sports car. The most dazzling thing was its small wings. It was an Aston Martin. When seeing this car, Carmacliff's eyes suddenly widened. What car is that? It looks so cool. Pointing to the car that drove over, Carmacliff asked Jiang Hai. But unfortunately, Jiang Hai recognized that it was an Aston Martin. As for what car it was, he really didn't know much about it. That's an Aston Martin Lagonda. It costs $1 million. It's a good car. At this time, Baveda Jeandurat listened to Jiang Hai's speechless expression, so he smiled and introduced it to Carmacliff. Oh, $1 million. God, it's ridiculously expensive. Rubbing her nose, Carmacliff smiled awkwardly, but her eyes kept staring at the car. It was obvious that she really liked it. This was an underground racetrack. Naturally, advanced racing cars were everywhere. And on the road, there was still a gap between modified cars and sports cars. However, sports cars were also divided into different grades. In China, you could buy a sports car for more than $100,000. But it was certainly impossible to use such a sports car to compete. The cars in the United States were very cheap, so there were a lot of sports cars here. For example, the BMW Z4 and the SL series of Mercedes-Benz were only $400,000 or $500,000 in China. Naturally, they were even cheaper in the United States. A BMW Z4, Model 13 Drive, 35IS, was only $70,000, and a 20IS was only $40,000. It was really not an expensive car. Ordinary cars like Ferrari, Porsche, and the like were only hundreds of thousands of US dollars, or even hundreds of thousands of US dollars. Moreover, they didn't all buy new cars. Some people would buy second-hand cars, and the price would be even cheaper. Buying second-hand items in the United States was ridiculously cheap. As mentioned earlier, if an item was scrapped in the United States, it would be very troublesome to replace it. Just filling in the trash list would be unbearable. Therefore, many people in the United States would choose to sell the item when exchanging it. If they couldn't sell it, they would rather give it to homeless people than throw it into the garbage dump. It was not because of anything else, but because it was useless. Therefore, second-hand things in the United States were basically half sold and half given away. It was the same for cars. For some rich people, sports cars could only be driven for 2 years. After that, they would sell the car. Therefore, in some second-hand car markets, you could often see many new and cheap second-hand sports cars. Some cars only ran for tens of thousands of kilometers, but were sold for half or even 1/3 of the price. It was very suitable. Suddenly, a car that cost $1 million appeared in a group of cars that were worth tens of thousands of US. It was indeed very eye-catching. After a few swings, the car stopped in the parking lot closest to the exit. "Hey Izzo, you're here." "Hey Izzo, how are you?" "Wow, Izzo, your car is still so cool." As the car stopped, a white man got out of the car and danced proudly, but no one came to interrupt him. After he finished dancing, the car owners around him excitedly came to greet him. In the passenger seat of his car, a punk girl dressed quite non-mainstream also came out, chewing gum while glancing at the people around her. At this time, 2 people also got out of the AGM that looked like a hedgehog, a black man and a middle-aged white man. After seeing this person, the people who were originally very enthusiastic instantly extinguished their voices. It was obvious that these people were very afraid of this middle-aged man, but this middle-aged man smiled and nodded to them. "Dad, you came out too early, the atmosphere is not good yet." Looking at the middle-aged white man, the young man named Izzo couldn't help but walk over with some dissatisfaction, and said to the middle-aged man with a smile, "You can't expect me to stay in this iron box for the whole night, right? People always need to adapt." Looking at Izzo in front of him, the middle-aged man said with a smile. As he spoke, he scanned the audience with his eyes. Anyone who met his gaze would feel a little embarrassed, and then look away. But because Jiang Hai and the others were standing far away, no one noticed them. "Who is that person? He seems to be very powerful." Looking at the people who came in from a distance, Karmacliff asked with some doubts. "Izzo Adis, the #1 driver here in the underground racetrack, his level is quite good. As for the middle-aged man, Hearing Karmacliff's words, Baveda Jindaro also explained, "But the identity of Izzo Adis is easy to say, but the identity of the middle-aged man is really not easy to say. So he is also a little speechless." "Kristen Adis, how do you know him? He is not a good person." But at this moment, Jiang Hai's mind turned and remembered this person, and then he said with some doubts. He really didn't understand why these people were related to them. "Do you know him?" Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Baveda Jindaro looked at Jiang Hai with some surprise. "Oh, didn't you tell him that I am also a high-level person?" Listening to Baveda Jindaro's words, Jiang Hai subconsciously wanted to say why he knew this person, but he swallowed the words back at the tip of his tongue, because obviously, what happened that day couldn't be said, especially in front of Baveda Jindaro. After all, Jiang Hai knew him because of the football game. And after the football game, Jiang Hai, Kelly Solon, and Delia George did something not so good friends. Now if Jiang Hai said it, and Baveda Jindaro investigated it, then the matter of him wearing a green hat couldn't be concealed. Therefore, Jiang Hai's words changed and became another statement. And this statement, Baveda Jindaro agreed with it. Indeed, Delia George told him that Jiang Hai was a rich man, and it was normal for rich people to know people who opened casinos. This underground tournament was first established by Kristen Adis. It was only after he and a few of his partners discovered this place that it slowly developed. But in recent years, they have all become successful people, so they don't come here to play anymore. Instead, it is his son who is very popular here. At this time, Jack King also stood up and explained to Jiang Hai and the others. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai already wanted to leave, not because he was afraid of this Kristen Adis, but because he felt that he didn't need to have any interaction with this guy. The two of them were destined to be in different worlds. But when Jiang Hai wanted to hide, Kristen Adis suddenly looked at Jiang Hai and the others. At a glance he saw Jiang Hai, the outstanding Huaxia. His eyes narrowed, and the corners of his mouth rose unconsciously. Then he walked over with his bodyguard and driver with a smile. Izzo Adis, who was still fooling around, saw his father's appearance and was a little puzzled, but he still walked over. "Hey Jiang, I didn't expect you to be here. We are fated. Jiang Hai didn't know Kristen Adis. After all, he was just a casino owner with a net worth of tens of millions of dollars. It would be an exaggeration to say that he was worth hundreds of millions. But Jiang Hai's net worth was in the billions. It was impossible for him not to know him, the richest man in Winthrop. Hello, Mr. Adis. Seeing the other party taking the initiative to greet him, Jiang Hai smiled and hugged him. This was his territory now. Even if Jiang Hai didn't show him any respect, he still had to show the proper attitude. Oh, calling me Adis is too strange. After all, we have met before. Haha, just call me Kristen, what do you think? After the hug, Kristen Adis said with a smile, and Jiang Hai nodded. Jiang, are you also interested in racing? I was quite obsessed with it back then. After all, there are very few things that can stimulate people like us, right? Seeing that Jiang Hai nodded, Kristen Adis brought Jiang Hai to the side and said eagerly. He hoped to become friends with Jiang Hai, but he didn't know if Jiang Hai thought so. Kristen Adis nodded his head and took Jiang Hai to the side. I don't have much of a hobby for speed. I prefer black technology and protection. For example, the car I usually drive is Brock's Shield and Terrace electric car. But unfortunately, Jiang Hai came here purely out of curiosity. He didn't know what he thought about racing. He wasn't the kind of young man who liked to risk his life. He wasn't empty, lonely, or cold at all. Oh, then your life is really a little boring. Believe me, try it, and your life will be complete. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Kristen Adis said with some pity. He originally thought that this was a common topic. Speaking of excitement, other than racing, I don't think there are many things that can give us excitement. Let's forget about poison. After all, your body is so good. Haha, woman, I don't need to explain this. Also gambling. If you have time, please do come to my casino. I have all the fun things there. Of course, I also have all the things mentioned above. Since you're here, I will give you the best VIP service. Seeing that Jiang Hai didn't answer, Kristen Adis smiled and guided Jiang Hai. If Jiang Hai was really an ignorant second-generation kid, or a nouveau riche, maybe he would really go and experience it. Unfortunately, he wasn't. Jiang Hai could be said to be a person of principle. He liked eating and drinking very much, but he almost didn't touch the other three. The third one, he did touch a few times, but it wasn't to the point where he would ruin his family. One was gambling, and the other was poison. Jiang Hai was still very principled. These two things were not very tempting to him. Chapter 7:10. To be honest, I'm not very interested in these things. If you have anything to say, Mr. Adis, it's better to be direct. My English is not very good. Hearing that Kristen wanted to lead him to his casino, Jiang Hai was a little confused. Because Jiang Hai still believes in his ability in Boston. If this guy has any bad intentions and wants to get Jiang Hai involved in something, or wants to kidnap Jiang Hai and force Jiang Hai to gamble, then he will not have a good ending. To go to such a place, Jiang Hai doesn't have to bring Azalina, Belle, and Knerson Peters, but it is inevitable to bring one of them. No matter who these three people are, coupled with Jiang Hai's strength, no one can stop them if they want to leave. So this guy must have some conspiracy to call him over. But Jiang Hai doesn't know what it is. This feeling of not knowing what the other party wants. Jiang Hai is very uncomfortable, so he simply asked directly. Okay, you're really straightforward, hee. Actually, I want to talk to you, Mr. Jiang, mainly because I want to talk to you about a cooperation. Hearing Jiang Hai's straightforward words, Kristen Adis couldn't help but smile and say, Cooperation? Is there anything to cooperate between us? Hearing his words, Jiang Hai asked with some doubts. Of course, we have the best cooperation project between us, that is tourists. You have connections to get tourists from Huaxia. I've heard that Huaxia tourists are the richest group of people in the world at present. After they come here, it's boring to just go sightseeing. We can add more entertainment for them, and then I'll give you 30% of the net profit. Seeing that Jiang Hai was about to explain, Kristen Adis also made it clear as he wished. Upon hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but sneer in his heart. He knew that this guy didn't have any good intentions. Needless to say, it was clear that Jiang Hai would never agree to this. Although his main wealth was in the United States, His roots were in Huaxia. He invited these tourists to come over to have fun. Jiang Hai's tour group was not a shopping group. Naturally, it could not be a group that cheated people. Let these people go to the casino? If these people wanted to go, then Jiang Hai could even take them to the casinos in Atlantic City. Those were the proper casinos. Go to Kristen Eddies' casinos? What was going on? Jiang Hai didn't just say that there was gambling in his casino, but also pornography and drugs. He didn't want his tourists and compatriots to be involved in these things. This was a matter of principle. Jiang Hai didn't need to consider anything at all. Sorry, I can't do that. Looking at Kristen Eddies in front of him, Jiang Hai said calmly. Hearing Jiang Hai reject him so straightforwardly, Kristen Eddies was stunned. Didn't they say that Huaxia people were very tactful? How come there is such an anomaly like Jiang Hai who doesn't even bother to pretend and directly rejects me? Oh, that's a pity. Smiling awkwardly, Kristen Eddies smiled at Jiang Hai and then ended the topic. Since Jiang Hai had such an attitude, he had nothing to say because he could tell that Jiang Hai didn't want to do this business at all. And he wasn't waiting for a good price for Jiang Hai. This was a matter of principle. He let tourists come here to play, first, to develop Winthrop, and second, for the sake of domestic tourists. When they came here to play, Jiang Hai could provide them with the best service. Whether it was shopping, eating, or playing, all of it was the best, most suitable, and most cost-effective. While the residents of Winthrop were making money, they should also be able to enjoy themselves and eat well. Even if they bought American goods, under the premise that the quality was guaranteed, the price would be much cheaper than what they bought in New York. This could be said to be a win-win situation. Jiang Hai wasn't going to ruin this situation at all. As for the 30% profit that Kristen Eddies mentioned, Jiang Hai laughed. How much could 30% profit be? 300,000? 3 million? 30 million? Let alone 30 million. Even 300 million. Jiang Hai wouldn't be tempted. Because he had now made a name for himself in Soaring Dragon. His beef had an annual income of more than $1 billion, and his fish had an annual income of more than $1 billion as well. In total, he had an annual income of more than $3 billion. Would he be interested in the so-called 30% profit of Kristen Eddies? Don't be ridiculous. Show me some respect. Just when Jiang Hai and Kristen Eddies were at a stalemate, but he still insisted on talking to Jiang Hai about the situation, Delia George's voice suddenly came from afar. Hearing her voice, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look into the distance, only to find that Bavetta Jean Durat was already arguing with Izzo Eddies. As for Delia George, she was protected by Kelly Sauron. Boy, how's it going? However, although he was yelled at by Delia George, Izzo Eddies' eyes were always on Bavetta Jean Durat. Hearing his words, there was some hesitation in Bavetta Jean Durat's eyes, but he still stared back firmly. Boy, don't be unappreciative. That's right, even if you want to die, you have to find a way. Haha girl, it's your blessing to be chosen by Izzo. Looking at the tense situation here, some of the racers in the distance couldn't help but gather around, making sarcastic remarks to put pressure on Bavetta Jean Durat. Looking at the situation over there, Jiang Hai couldn't help but frown. He glanced at Kristen Eddies, who was also puzzled, and walked over. Seeing Jiang Hai coming over, Delia, who was still a little afraid, seemed to have found a backbone and instantly leaned on Jiang Hai's side. What's going on? Looking at the few people around him who were a little flustered, Jiang Hai frowned. What's going on? It's that guy. He took a fancy to Delia, and came over saying that he wanted Delia to accompany him for a night. Bavetta Jean Durat stood out, but the other party used money to throw money at him. I think that guy can't stand it anymore. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Kelly Sauron, who didn't have a good impression of Bavetta Jean Durat, couldn't help but whisper, "What the hell?" Listening to this very melodramatic plot, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be a little confused. But this plot is not right. Why is Bavetta Jean Durat being bullied? Shouldn't this kind of plot happen to me? I'm the son of the Bitwall, okay? How can such a face-slapping opportunity fall on someone else's head? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at a man named Izzo. When this man saw Jiang Hai stand up, he also couldn't help but look at his father. This man named Izzo, although a little stupid, he was not stupid. At least he knew who he could provoke and who he couldn't. He could see that his father was very afraid of Jiang Hai. Growing up in such an environment, he naturally knew who he could provoke and who he couldn't. He did this because he really did have some feelings for Delia, and also because he wanted to test Jiang Hai. Looking at Jiang Hai standing up, he couldn't help but look at his father. Now it's up to his father to decide what to do. Hey Jiang, these are the children's affairs. We don't need to get involved. What do you think? Seeing his son's gaze, Kristen, Adis stepped forward and said with a smile. In fact, this was also a test to see what Jiang Hai was thinking. That's right, this is our bet. If you think $5,000 is too little, then double it, $10,000, how about it? Listening to his father's words, Adis couldn't help but say with a smile. Hearing what he said, Jack King and the others, who were still standing behind Bavetta Jean Durat, couldn't help but be a little tempted. $10,000 is definitely not a small amount of money in the United States. It's hard to say if an average person can earn $10,000 in 3 months' work. It's at least equivalent to the income of an average white-collar worker for 2 months. In Jack King's view, it's just a girlfriend. If one night can be exchanged for $10,000, then it's not impossible. The most important thing is that it's not their girlfriend. TSK, you have to thank me. Otherwise, if I let you follow that scum, he would have sold you long ago. As soon as Izzo's voice fell, Jiang Hai felt the change in Jack King and the others, so he said to Kelly, Soren with a smile. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Jack King's face couldn't help but turn red and purple. He was indeed a little tempted just now. It was $10,000, and according to Izzo's words, as long as he competed with him, if Bavetta Jean Durat won, then the $10,000 would be his. If he lost, Delia would belong to him for one night, and the $10,000 would still be his. This was throwing money at him. It was impossible for these people not to be tempted. Their insistence in their hearts was quite ridiculous. People like him would laugh at poverty, and not at prostitution. He didn't think that there was anything wrong with what he did. However, this matter could be said in private. But for Jiang Hai to say it in front of his face, this guy's face couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Jiang Hai, this is a matter between the two of them. Why are you an outsider meddling in it? Looking at Jiang Hai, Jack King said angrily. He knew that Jiang Hai's power was not comparable to his, so he said it in detail. Yeah, what does it have to do with you? Why are you interrupting? Hearing his words, Jiang Hai was polite and directly retorted. When Jack King heard Jiang Hai's retort, his face became even more ugly. I'm a good friend of Bavetta. I'm just telling him the truth. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Jack King said with a serious face. You call this telling the truth? I think you're just a pimp. Delia is my friend. If anything happens to her, I won't be able to explain it to her father. So, no matter what you say, it's impossible to use her as a bet. If you're willing, seeing that you like pimping so much, you can introduce your mother or your sister to him. I think he might like them. Listening to Jack's shameless words, Jiang Hai also smiled disdainfully, and then said slowly. Jiang Hai had never been a person who was easy to talk to. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Jack King almost couldn't control himself. These words were too hurtful, but Jiang Hai thought of him as a person. Jack is my friend, and this is our business. If something happened to Kelly, we wouldn't say anything. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Bavetta Jean Durat's face was a little embarrassed. He looked at Jiang Hai with a gloomy face and said, Jack is my friend, and this is our business. You can play however you want, as long as you're happy. It has nothing to do with me if you want to be gay, but I'm taking Delia away. Jiang Hai waved his hand casually. He didn't want to stay in this foul place anymore, but before he left, he must take Delia away. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Delia, Kelly and Karmacliff all gathered around Jiang Hai and walked toward Jiang Hai's F-650. Delia, you're leaving now. Do you not believe me? Seeing that Delia was about to leave, Bavetta Jean Durat shouted loudly. Hearing his words, Delia also turned her head. Believe you? Believe you for what? Believe in your character or your driving skills. Hearing his words, Delia George turned his head and looked at her with some disgust on his face. Hearing her words, Bavetta Jean Durat couldn't help but be speechless. There was no way to answer this. If she believed in his character, then he wouldn't have hesitated just now to exchange his girlfriend for money. What kind of crazy person would have such an idea? But believe in his driving skills? Hee, isn't that still using her as a bet? I'm quite insecure about you now. I think we need to reconsider the relationship between us. After Delia finished speaking, she sat in Jiang Hai's car. Looking at her attitude, Jiang Hai also shrugged, and then went straight to the car. When he got in the car and started the engine, Izzo, who saw that his prey was about to leave, stopped in front of Jiang Hai's car and wanted to ask for an explanation, but Izzo's father waved his hand. The reason why he was so polite to Jiang Hai was that he fancied the tourist resources in Jiang Hai's hands, and also because he knew that Jiang Hai's power in this area was just a person's name and a tree's shadow last year. But when Jiang Hai's taxes were paid this year, he became the object of protection for Boston, no, the entire Massachusetts state government. Fighting with such a person was not what he should do. Chapter 7:11. Let's go. I'll look for you at the fishing exhibition tomorrow. Kelly Solon got out of the car with Karmacliff and looked at Jiang Hai with a smile. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled and nodded. After watching Kelly Solon get out of the car, Jiang Hai also glanced at Delia George, who was still sitting in the back seat. Originally, something was very likely to happen between them tonight. However, because of what happened, Jiang Hai couldn't do anything with Kelly anymore. Now the most important thing was to send Delia George home. This was the most important thing. Looking at her, Jiang Hai sighed. What was going on tonight? In the end, they said that they were going to watch a race, but they left without even watching the race. But if Jiang Hai had to choose, Delia was still his friend after all. If he had to choose again, he would still take her with him. Watching Kelly and Karmacliff walk into the B City University dormitory area, Jiang Hai deliberately waited for a while. After Kelly and Karmacliff both called to tell Jiang Hai that they had arrived at the dormitory safely, Jiang Hai started the car and drove to Winthrop. He still needed to go to Old George's house first to send Delia back. Okay, relax a little. Looking at Delia in the rearview mirror, who still seemed to have not recovered, Jiang Hai sighed. People, who hasn't loved a few scumbags in their life? Just treat it as if you are blind, right? Medicine is so advanced now, blindness can be cured. Looking at Delia in the back, Jiang Hai also spoke slowly. But Delia didn't seem to listen. Looking at her somewhat dazed look, Jiang Hai also closed his mouth. He was not a psychiatrist, so it was pointless for him to speak on his own. The car sped along the deserted road, and Jiang Hai focused more on driving. Since Delia wasn't willing to chat, Jiang Hai didn't say anything. He turned on the radio and listened to the music playing on the midnight music station. It was a pretty good radio station in America. That was because TV and radio stations in the United States were allowed to be privately operated. The main source of income came from selling advertisements. Therefore, the programs produced by the TV stations here were all very good, and the competition was extremely intense. For example, the 5 major TV stations in America, CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox and CW, had extremely intense competition. Compared to these TV stations in America, Huasia's TV stations were like elementary school students. After all, the TV stations in Huaxia were all state-owned, but the TV stations here were all private. They would broadcast TV dramas, and if the ratings weren't good, the domestic TV stations would at most endure it, and it would be over after the broadcast. But in America, it would be directly cut off. The TV dramas here were basically broadcast while filming. There were very few TV dramas that were broadcast after filming, unless the TV station had considerable confidence in the production team. For example, there was a drama that was broadcast here recently. It was called Wildland, while the domestic translation seemed to be called Wasteland, and it was starring the most popular male star in America, Wu Yanzu. This was a show that was very confident in the production team. It was broadcast after filming, and it was said to be an adaptation of Journey to the West. So in the beginning, Jiang Hai also watched it, but to be honest, this drama wasn't particularly good. While driving, Jiang Hai's mind was in a mess as he listened to the music. Unknowingly, the car had already passed Boston's airport. At this time, it was about 20 minutes away from Winthrop. But at this time, Jiang Hai suddenly heard a rustling sound. Looking in the rearview mirror, he found that the sound came from Delia behind him, which made Jiang Hai a little puzzled. In the rearview mirror, he saw that she was adjusting her clothes at the back. Jiang Hai glanced at it and stopped looking. Girls' clothes were often a little uncomfortable, so it was understandable to adjust it a little, Jiang Hai thought. But after he stopped looking, he didn't notice that Delia actually took out a singlet from her clothes. A singlet for women. The word singlet would be obscured, but everyone probably understood it. After putting the singlet aside, Delia also took off her top. With her movements, her upper body appeared in the car in an instant. When Jiang Hai wasn't paying attention, Delia had unknowingly taken off all her clothes, folded them neatly, and put them on the back seat. Then, she propped herself on the backrest in front of Jiang Hai. Under Jiang Hai's surprised gaze, she rushed from the back to the front passenger seat. Cough, what are you doing? When Delia propped herself up, Jiang Hai also subconsciously looked to the side. As a result, he just happened to see the scene in front of him. He couldn't help but be shocked. What is this? Why was everything fine just now? Jiang Hai was so scared that he almost drove the car into a ditch. Fortunately, it was now night, and Jiang Hai was the only car here. Otherwise, if Jiang Hai drew a dragon on the road, who knew what would happen? After stabilizing the car, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look at Delia. You said that I have a boyfriend, so we can't do that. Now that I don't have a boyfriend, is it okay? Looking at Jiang Hai's surprised gaze, Delia laid on Jiang Hai's lap. She raised her head to look at Jiang Hai, and her right hand was placed in an indescribable place. The weather in April was still a bit cold. As soon as she put her hand in, Jiang Hai felt a chill, and he couldn't help but take a deep breath. Then he glanced at Delia next to him. That feeling made Jiang Hai step on the brakes. He was really afraid that it would be troublesome if there was an accident later. Hey, this isn't very good. After stopping the car and looking at Delia, Jiang Hai hesitated for a moment, but he still spoke to her. What's wrong with this? I don't want to be your girlfriend, and you're not my boyfriend. We're just taking what we need. Lend me your hand. Seeing that Jiang Hai had stopped the car, Delia said with a smile. Then she pulled Jiang Hai's hand. What happened next was easy to understand. Since the arrow was already on the bow, then Jiang Hai had no choice but to release it. Looking at Delia in front of him, Jiang Hai struggled for a moment in his heart, but he soon fell. The flames of war ignited in Jiang Hai's driving seat. The following scene couldn't be described, because it had already been edited. It could only be said that there were too many things that couldn't be described in detail in the air. About an hour later, the two of them lay in the grass near the car. With Jiang Hai's coat under her, Delia was wrapped around Jiang Hai's body, like an octopus, constantly panting. In the battle just now, she was still leading the initiative at the beginning, but later, she was completely conquered by Jiang Hai. With her physical fitness, how could she be Jiang Hai's opponent? But although she fell, she was quite happy in her heart. What is between us? Delia hugged Jiang Hai and asked him in Jiang Hai's ear. I don't know how to answer you. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was also a little hesitant. Delia was different from the women around Jiang Hai. He could keep the women around him by his side. But to be honest, Jiang Hai wasn't used to Delia. If it was just something that couldn't be described, then Jiang Hai might not be able to control himself. But if they were really in a relationship, then TSK, you scum. Fortunately, I didn't expect anything. Don't worry, I won't pester you. But in the future, you can't refuse me. Looking at Jiang Hai's somewhat tangled expression, Delia patted Jiang Hai's chest and said hatefully. But then she relaxed because she didn't take this matter too seriously from the beginning. She and Jiang Hai. She also understood that Jiang Hai probably wouldn't have any formal relationship with her. But she didn't care. As long as she was on good terms with Jiang Hai, if she had any problems in the future, then Jiang Hai would definitely help her. Moreover, even if Jiang Hai couldn't give her any status, as long as she said it, some compensation and benefits were indispensable. Delia let herself change into a comfortable position and lay here. Feeling Jiang Hai's awkwardness, Delia laughed. After the two chatted here for almost half an hour, they also got up to pack up and return to the car. First, it was because it was really too late now. If they were seen by a passing car, it would be awkward. Second, there were mosquitoes in the United States. Jiang Hai's body had the aura of the Dragon Ball, so mosquitoes naturally didn't dare to come over. But Delia couldn't. She had just accepted the aura, so she was a delicious meal in the eyes of mosquitoes. So after the two packed up, they got into the car. Jiang Hai drove, and Delia put on her clothes one by one. When the car was about to arrive at Delia's house, she had already put on her clothes. The benefits of neatly folded clothes just now were undoubtedly revealed at this time. There were no wrinkles or the like on it. It was completely impossible to tell what had happened between the two just now. The car soon arrived outside her family's horse farm. But when they arrived, Jiang Hai found that there was a car waiting for him at Delia George's door. Seeing Jiang Hai's car coming, the person in the car immediately came out. This person was none other than Baveda Gendero. It was obvious that he didn't want him to break up with Delia George. He knew that his hesitation just now hurt Delia, and he also knew that it was wrong. So after Jiang Hai and the others left, he immediately chased after them. But unfortunately, Jiang Hai and the others had already left. Then he ignored Jack and the others' words, and drove over to apologize to her. But he didn't expect to wait here for so long. As soon as he saw Jiang Hai and Delia coming back, he immediately looked at the two of them. When he found that the two of them were neatly dressed, and one was sitting in the front and the other in the back, he inexplicably breathed a sigh of relief. God knew why he breathed a sigh of relief. After Delia saw his figure, her face was a little cold, and she didn't walk forward. After getting out of the car, she hugged Jiang Hai, then ignored him and walked into her family's horse farm. From beginning to end, she didn't look at Baveda Gendero. This made Baveda Gendero stand by the side and open his mouth helplessly. Delia. Hey Jiang. Thank you for sending her back. Seeing Delia ignoring him, Baveda Gendero couldn't help but be speechless. He knew that Delia still hated him at this time, but he really couldn't say anything. Today's matter was indeed his fault. You're welcome. But today, your performance was really bad. Glancing at Baveda Gendero, to be honest, Jiang Hai was a little embarrassed. After all, Delia was also his ex-girlfriend, and something had happened between them just now. Then he saw Baveda Gendero thanking him. Even if Jiang Hai's skin was thick, he was still a little embarrassed. But now that he was talking to him, Jiang Hai couldn't run away. Wouldn't that be exposing himself? I know. I just hesitated for a moment. Hey, it seems that it's not easy to get Delia's forgiveness. By the way, why are you so slow? Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Baveda Gendero sighed. He also knew that this was troublesome. But in addition to his relationship with Delia, he also had some doubts about the timing. He had waited here for almost 3 hours before Jiang Hai and the others came back. It was indeed a little too slow. Oh, we went to eat something first, and then sent Kelly and the others back to school before we came back. Hearing Baveda Gendero's words, Jiang Hai's face couldn't help but turn red. Fortunately, it was night, so it couldn't be seen clearly. Otherwise, with Jiang Hai's level of lying, he would have been seen through long ago. Hey, do you want to go for a drink? After listening to Jiang Hai's words, Baveda Gendero believed it, and then looked at Jiang Hai and asked. No, I'm also in a hurry to go home. Shaking his head, Jiang Hai didn't want to stay with this Baveda Gendero anymore. So after saying that, Jiang Hai got in the car and left, leaving Baveda Gendero alone, looking at Delia's house in a daze. Chapter 7:12. When Jiang Hai returned home, he looked at the 4 girls who were sleeping on the bed, and couldn't help but chuckle. For Jiang Hai, going out to play was one thing, but at least he knew to come back. After taking a shower, Jiang Hai got into the 4 girls' beds and hugged them to sleep. The next morning before dawn, Jiang Hai got up again and went to the dock in the dark. Edward Anderson and the others had been waiting at the dock for a long time. Today was the second day of the exhibition. In addition to getting some things for the exhibition, they also needed to get the $30,000 worth of fish from the high-end Western restaurant. Yesterday afternoon, Eleanor, Cece, and the others came back first to look for fish and the like. Of course, they also came back to rest first. After Edward Anderson and the others came back in the evening, everyone rested for a while and went out to sea at about 10 o'clock in the evening. According to the classification of the fish on the sonar, they caught the fish that the people from the high-end restaurant needed. Because there weren't many fish, one car was enough. If they wanted to collect more fish in the future, it might be a little troublesome. Most of the time, Jiang Hai would probably just ship to deliver the fish. After all, transporting these fish by car was time-consuming and laborious, and there was no guarantee that they were fresh. Prawalton had considered this point a long time ago. After Jiang Hai arrived, he helped to load the fish into the car. After getting the fish to be delivered today, and the fish needed for the exhibition, everyone got in the car and went to Boston. On the way, they called the person who ordered yesterday. After entering downtown Boston, the people from the high-end restaurant had already appeared and took one of the F-750 cars to the high-end restaurant. At this time, the restaurant was not yet open, but the kitchen was already busy. Jiang Hai followed them. After the other party finished inspecting the goods, Jiang Hai drove away and went to the exhibition. When he arrived, Jiang Hai unexpectedly found that Kelly Soren was already there. However, Karma Cliff didn't come today. At this time, she was helping Edward Anderson to arrange the fish. Edward Anderson and the others were familiar with this girl. After all, Kelly Soren's father was famous in Winthrop. At first, they were a little surprised that she came to help early in the morning. However, after hearing that she was a good friend of Jiang Hai, they all understood that in their eyes, Jiang Hai was not a good person, especially when it came to relationships between men and women. In fact, until now, they didn't know who Jiang Hai's real girlfriend was, and who was their mistress. However, this did not prevent them from showing their kindness to every woman who claimed to be Jiang Hai's friend. However, Kelly Soren was not a pretentious girl. She used to help her parents when she was at home. Therefore, she was not as uncomfortable as Jiang Hai when it came to work. After learning that Jiang Hai was holding a meeting here, she was a little late yesterday and did not come to help. However, this morning, she got up very early on purpose and took the first bus to come here. When she arrived, it was only 6 o'clock in the morning, and the sky was not completely bright yet. Jiang Hai was also delivering things. However, looking at the busy Edward Anderson, Kelly Soren did not say anything. She directly put on a leather bag, put on plastic gloves, and tied her hair behind her back. She was much more skillful than Jiang Hai. When Jiang Hai parked the car and saw her, he could not help but smile. To be honest, Jiang Hai appreciated such a girl. Some people say that between a goddess and a tomboy, men prefer goddesses. This is because they are more pretentious and more delicate. They give people the feeling that they want to protect them. However, Jiang Hai doesn't have a good impression of such a delicate goddess. Among the people he dated, there were no real social butterflies. Compared to such goddesses, he preferred rougher women. Looking at the people around him, it was clear. Basically, they were all people who could work in the hall, cook in the kitchen, do farm work, and beat up hooligans. Chi and Prawalton were strong women. Ai Xiaoxi's family was in the countryside, so naturally, she could do these kinds of work. Feng Yinshan would soon come out to work and take care of herself. Although the path she took was a little crooked, there were not many things to do. Aphrodite and the others did not have a soft girl. The wine manor depended on them to take care of it. The only one who could be considered a soft girl was probably Selena Gomez, but the relationship between the two was still uncertain. Therefore, in conclusion, Jiang Hai still preferred those girls who were a little tough. Jiang Hai was actually not too interested in girls who were completely delicate and soft. After greeting Kelly, Jiang Hai put on his equipment and began to get busy. As the morning sun gradually rose, the temperature got higher and higher, and the sky gradually brightened. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the second day of the exhibition began again. It was basically the same as yesterday's exhibition, but at Jiang Hai's booth, there was an extra pretty girl. Jiang Hai's booth was the same. There were no changes, But the high-end restaurant he sent the fish to was undergoing some changes. The restaurant Jiang Hai sent was called El Espalier. Jiang Hai did not know how to translate it. But in Boston, no, in the entire United States, it was quite a famous restaurant. This restaurant was located in Boston's most high-end commercial and residential area, Back Bay. It did not look very high-end. It was a little low-key and not very noisy. It was not like some hotels that wanted to make people's hair stand up. This restaurant looked very unusual, but it was recognized as the best French restaurant in Boston. It had been rated 5 diamonds by AAA for 12 consecutive years. It was also the only non-cheesy restaurant in Boston that was rated 4 stars by Forbes for 12 consecutive years. There were many people who came to eat at this restaurant every day, but it was important to note that this restaurant was not a Michelin restaurant, because Boston did not have a Michelin restaurant at all. There were often some people who showed off in their circle of friends, saying that they ate in a Michelin restaurant. In fact, it was all nonsense, because in the United States, only New York, Las Vegas, Mexico, San Francisco, and a few cities near Los Angeles had Michelin star restaurants. Big cities like Boston were not included in the rating. Expensive did not mean that it was a Michelin star, but expensive certainly meant that the service here was good, and the food was good. There were rich people everywhere. Naturally, Boston, as a metropolitan area, was no exception. Translator. WQL editor. Alim in the morning, the restaurant was a bit deserted. However, at lunchtime, a group of well-dressed guys walked into the restaurant with their female companions wearing heavy makeup. As usual, they ordered some French cuisine. But today, when the fish they ordered was served, many people felt a little strange. Usually, it should be cod, but at this time, it was actually American red fish. Waiter, what's the matter with these fish? Looking at the fish on the plate, these rich people could not help but ask the waiter next to them. Even if American red fish was more expensive than cod, this was not the dish they ordered. Sir, this is the high-quality red fish we just purchased today. You can have a taste. If you're not satisfied with the taste, we'll change it to codfish for you. Upon hearing someone's complaint, the waiter who had already prepared the dishes smiled and said. Hearing the waiter's words, some people were not willing to try it and directly asked for a change, but some people tried a bite. With this bite, their eyes lit up instantly. How could Jiang Hai's red fish be compared to the haddock and cod in the Atlantic Ocean? His fish meat was really delicate and smooth to the extreme. Generally speaking, the meat of sea fish was relatively coarse, but Jiang Hai's fish meat not only did not have that kind of coarse texture, but also had a very strong elasticity. When chewing, one would not feel dry, and there was a unique sweetness of sea fish. When these people tasted the fish for the first time, they were a little dazed. The second, third, and fourth mouthfuls were eaten just like that. After eating, they would ask about the price of the fish, and what other fish were there. The people in this restaurant were actually mentally prepared for this kind of scene. After all, if they had not personally tasted the freshness of Jiang Hai's fish yesterday, they would definitely not have ordered the fish today. After all, the price of Jiang Hai's fish was at least 3 times higher than the market price. Half a time higher was enough for this restaurant to choose the best fish. If it were not for this special taste, they would not have ordered the fish. In the eyes of the restaurant's owner and the waiter, almost all the customers who came to eat the set meal would order a fish dish after eating the main dish of fish. After learning that there were only American red fish, salmon, grouper, and anchovies, they were a little dissatisfied. Jiang Hai's fish meat was inexplicably attractive to these diners who had never absorbed spiritual energy before. Although it was not like the novels he had read before, where they could not wait to swallow their tongues, or that this taste should only exist in the sky, it was delicious. The fresh taste stimulated the taste buds, making people unable to stop themselves. Almost the amount that was originally intended to be sold for a day was almost sold out after lunch. Moreover, these customers still said that they would come to eat in the evening when they left. Some people even directly booked seats in the evening after lunch. Seeing this scene, the restaurant's owner's eyes suddenly lit up. He immediately went to find the buyer from yesterday. They still wanted to order Jiang Hai's fish, but this time, In addition to these 4 types of fish, they also wanted to try some other fish. Therefore, at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the buyer left the restaurant again and went to the exhibition to find Edward Anderson. At this time, Edward Anderson was resting here because he had not made a single transaction this morning. After all, the fish here were too expensive. They were very interested in tasting the freshness of the fish or watching it. But if they were asked to buy it, they wouldn't be interested at all, especially the second-rate dealers. They didn't know if the fish would be worth a lot of money when they were shipped inland. It was because of this observation that after the excitement of the first day, Edward Anderson and the others calmed down a lot. After having lunch with them, Jiang Hai went out to play with Kelly in the afternoon. In their opinion, there was nothing to do now. Even Edward Anderson was just resting at this time, preparing to cut a few fish at 3 o'clock. At this time, the buyer quickly ran over. "Oh, it's you. Why are you in such a hurry? Is there a problem with our fish?" Looking at the buyer in front of him, Edward Anderson still had some impression of him. Seeing him running in such a hurry, Edward Anderson was stunned for a moment. This was not very scientific. "Yes, no, it's about your fish. But it's not that there's a problem with the fish. It's that we're going to buy your fish." After taking a few deep breaths, the buyer looked at Edward Anderson in front of him and said with a smile, "Buy our fish? Is it still 30,000? If it's still 30,000, then we may have to deliver the goods every few days." Hearing his words, Edward Anderson thought for a moment and said, although this was also a business, it would be very troublesome to catch them every day. How much was the diesel? For a trip to the sea, just the diesel alone cost more than $3,000. The fish could be sold for $30,000, and the tax was more than $10,000. Plus the fuel and the money they spent, Jiang Hai only had a few $1,000s left. Maybe he was spoiled by beef, but now even Edward Anderson was not interested in fish that cost a few $1,000s. If it was delivered once every few days, it would be fine. But such a top-notch restaurant naturally wouldn't allow it to be delivered once every few days. It's impossible to deliver every few days, but the quantity we want can be increased. According to yesterday's standard, we want double the fish and some precious seafood. What do you think? Hearing Edward Anderson's words, the buyer here shook his head and directly refused to deliver every few days. He would still deliver every day, but the quantity of fish would be increased a lot. Hearing his words, Edward Anderson also began to calculate in his heart. If what he said was true, then this thing was quite profitable. After all, this was just a Western restaurant. Other than this one, if the other restaurants saw the business opportunity in this, perhaps this would be a good choice. Chapter 7:13. Double? How many days are you going to sign the contract? Looking at the buyer in front of him, Edward Anderson calculated in his heart. Double the price would be $60,000 a day. Deducting the cost of diesel, $30,000 for taxes and labor, Jiang Hai could earn $30,000 a day. $30,000 a day, that would be $1 million a month. Let's see how long this person has signed for. If you can guarantee the quality, we are going to sign for a year first, and then we will talk about it according to the market price. Hearing Edward Anderson's words, the buyer thought for a while and booked a more stable time. A year, it's not too long, but it's not too short either. It depends on the quality of Jiang Hai's fish. Hearing his words, Edward Anderson also thought for a while. 1 million a month, 12 million a year, it's not bad. But it's a little troublesome to go to sea every day. Thinking of this, he nodded. After all, the fishing industry hasn't opened yet. $12 million a year, and it's still a net income, is actually very important for them. Then I'll call my boss and ask. After thinking for a while, Edward Anderson made a call to Jiang Hai. At this time, Jiang Hai was driving, and Kelly was sitting next to him, talking about interesting things in school. Hearing Edward Anderson's call, Jiang Hai also picked it up. After asking what's going on, Jiang Hai thought for a while. It doesn't matter if he gets fish every day, because Prawalton also requires fresh fish to be sold every day. The price of live fish and the price of dead fish are different. Sam's Club specializes in selling high-grade fish. Naturally, it was impossible to sell dead fish to customers. For example, tuna and the like would die when they came ashore. However, for fish like American redfish and grouper, they had to be kept alive. They would have to go out to sea every day to fish. When the time came, they would just bring some back to the restaurant. Moreover, if they really made a name for themselves, then this restaurant wouldn't be the only one ordering fish. Just like what Jiang Hai had said, there was no such thing as a monolith in any industry, especially in the restaurant industry. Paper couldn't contain fire. The news of the restaurant's explosive customers at noon had already spread throughout Boston's food and beverage industry in the evening. Many people knew that Jiang Hai's fish indeed had some miraculous effects. Therefore, on the third day, more and more restaurants came to Jiang Hai's door to try to place orders. This way, even if Prawalton didn't order every day, Jiang Hai could still get a lot of fish every day. However, if they had to go out to sea every day, it would be a little tiring for Edward Anderson and the other four. Jiang Hai was considering whether he should add more cowboys and fishermen. However, if the number of people increased, they wouldn't have enough space to live in. In fact, Jiang Hai had made a mistake from the very beginning. Although there were so many small villas in the manor, the owner of the manor didn't prepare for each cowboy to live in a villa. In the workers' quarters here, except for some famous leaders, such as Edward Anderson and Robbins Garcia, the other workers weren't qualified to live in a villa. Basically, it was good enough for each person to have a room. However, Jiang Hai didn't know at the beginning. He saw that Robbins Garcia lived in a villa alone. So naturally, the people who were recruited later would also have a villa for themselves. When he realized it later, it was too late. Americans were very particular about these things. It was best not to take back the benefits you gave them, because it wasn't a good thing. If he wanted to recruit more people now, not only would he need to recruit the fishermen, but he would also need to recruit a few more cowboys. Robbins Garcia and the others were indeed a little stretched. It wasn't that Jiang Hai couldn't afford to pay those cowboys, so it didn't matter. As Jiang Hai agreed, he was thinking about whether to build a few more villas or think of other ways. In fact, in Jiang Hai's heart, there was a way. His relationship with Aphrodite and the others was there. It didn't matter to let them live in the villas. This way, there would be 4 villas empty. It should be easy to recruit 8 people by then. Moreover, he didn't necessarily need to recruit 8 people, right? After hanging up the phone, Jiang Hai was thinking about how to tell Aphrodite and the others when he went back. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? If you have something to do, then you go ahead. Don't worry about me. Seeing that Jiang Hai was a little absent-minded after answering the phone, Kelly, Soren couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Kelly, Soren knew the relationship between herself and Jiang Hai. She regarded Jiang Hai as her boyfriend, but Jiang Hai didn't necessarily regard her as a girlfriend. However, it was not bad to be a friend even if she was not a girlfriend. As a friend, it was naturally impossible to hinder her good friend's path to wealth. So if Jiang Hai had something to do, she could let him do it first. After all, business matters were more important. Oh, it's nothing. I just took on a business. I'm just thinking about how much money this business can make. Looking at Kelly Soren, Jiang Hai said with a smile, and then continued to chat with Kelly Soren. However, when the car drove into downtown Boston, Jiang Hai and Kelly Soren were a little stupefied because they didn't know what to do next. Jiang Hai glanced at Kelly, and Kelly also looked at Jiang Hai. They couldn't help but look at each other and smile. What are we going to do? It's still so early. Looking at the watch, it was not even 3 o'clock yet. It was indeed a little early. Let's go to the movies. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Kelly thought for a moment and suggested with a smile. Watch a movie. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was stunned. In fact, for college students, going out with their boyfriends was nothing more than 3 things: watching a movie, shopping, and singing. Because Jiang Hai didn't like noisy places, Kelly didn't say that she wanted to sing. Shopping. It could be seen that Jiang Hai's interest was not strong, so there was only one movie left. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai thought for a moment and nodded slowly. It didn't matter if they went to the movies. Okay, Then let's go to the movies. What do you want to watch? Seeing Jiang Hai agree, Kelly immediately looked at her mobile phone. There are indeed more movies in North America than in China. A large number of movies are shot here every year, but domestic imports only account for a small part of them. The North American movie market is actually huge. Not only are there movies from the United States and Canada, but there are movies from all over the world. The schedule of the major cinemas is crowded. In the cinemas here, you can see all the movies you want to see, including some R-rated movies and pornographic movies. You can see them here. However, Kelly won't watch those movies with Jiang Hai. If Jiang Hai proposed it, she wouldn't refuse. But if Jiang Hai didn't say it, she wouldn't take the initiative to mention it. Looking at the movies on the mobile phone, Kelly thought for a moment and clicked on one of them. Let's go see the Fantasy Forest. Looking at Jiang Hai, Kelly Soren said with a smile. Fantasy Forest? While driving, Jiang Hai glanced at Kelly's mobile phone. But when he saw it, Jiang Hai couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This movie sounds like a children's movie. In fact, it is indeed so. The protagonist is a little boy from the Indian tribe. The story is somewhat similar to the story of the wolf child. It's about a little boy who wears red underpants outside, but there is no S on his chest. The little boy's father is an adventurer who was bitten to death by a tiger in the forest. Then, after the Black Panther found the little boy, it handed him over to the wolves. The wolves raised the little boy until he was a teenager. But the tiger found him, and then wanted to kill the little guy. The little guy ran away, and the story unfolded. Indeed, it's a children's movie, and it's not like the kind of children's movie that adults watch. It's more towards children. The only thing that can be seen is that the dubbing lineup is very strong. Jiang Hai glanced at it, he doesn't care. Then, when Kelly saw that Jiang Hai agreed, she smiled and bought 2 movie tickets. After buying the 2 tickets, Kelly looked at Jiang Hai and said with a smile, "The tickets are for 5:30 p.m. After watching it, it will be 7 p.m. We can go back and take a shower to get rid of the fishy smell on our bodies." After buying 2 tickets, Kelly looked at Jiang Hai and said with a smile. Hearing Kelly's words, Jiang Hai naturally understood what she meant by taking a shower. He smiled and looked at the nearby hotel. "No, let's go to my dormitory. I still need to change." Seeing Jiang Hai change his path and go to the hotel, Kelly couldn't help but blush. Then she said to Jiang Hai shyly, "Your dormitory? No one." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was a little surprised. The girls' dormitory? He really hasn't been there. Well, there shouldn't be anyone at this time, but we have to hurry. Glancing at Jiang Hai, Kelly couldn't help but bite her lips and whisper. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also stepped on the gas pedal, and the car went to B-City University. After logging in his car information at the entrance, Jiang Hai parked the car in front of the girls' dormitory building. Although B-City University is not like Harvard, and is quite famous, it's still quite good in Boston. The education philosophy of the Americans in Huaxia is just opposite. Huaxia children in elementary school, junior high school, and high school are extremely strict on education, but the Americans are just the opposite. A 5th grade student in Huaxia Elementary School, as long as he is not in a bad school, is at an average school, and his academic level is above average. When such a child comes to the United States, he or she may even have an advantage over the children in junior high school. Huaxia's force-feeding education has its own unique existence. Before entering university, it can be said that Huaxia students are much stronger than American students. But after entering university, it's the complete opposite. In the United States, there is no such thing as enduring until graduation. If you don't have enough credits here, you have to continue to study for 20 years, and the tuition of American universities is not cheap. If you don't have enough credits and have to repeat every year, it's really too troublesome. Going to university in China is actually just a time to play basketball, play games, and have a girlfriend. The main time to study is placed in the 3 weeks before the exam. In fact, it doesn't matter if you don't pass the exam. There is a makeup exam. If you are really bad at studying and can't pass the makeup exam, then it doesn't matter. As long as you have a good relationship with the tutor and enough money, Nothing will happen. As long as you don't hand in a blank paper. These are all small problems. But such a student, unless he or she drops out of school in the United States, may really have to study for the rest of their lives. At this time, the students are still in class, and Kelly's dormitory manager has a good relationship with her. For example, she knows that this manager will go home between 3 and 5 in the afternoon to pick up his third daughter from school. After Jiang-hai parked the car, the two sneaked into the dormitory building. When they came to the third floor, this is Kelly's dormitory. After entering, Jiang-hai can't help but let out a soft wow. Jiang-hai went to university before, but to be honest, Jiang-hai doesn't miss that dormitory because it is really bad. In a room less than 20 square meters, there are 8 bunk beds with metal frames. In addition, there are 8 tables squeezed in between. Jiang-hai and the others usually live in such a situation. But Kelly's dormitory is really different. It is also about 20 square meters, but there are only 2 beds. The 2 beds are called single beds, but they are actually wider about 1.7 meters. Next to the 2 beds are 2 large wardrobes. Next to the wardrobes is a study table. Other than that, there is also a shoe rack and a separate bathroom. Although there is no bathtub in the bathroom, there is a shower head, and it doesn't look small. In the dormitory building, there is a central air conditioner and floor heating. Compared to this dormitory, the dormitory Jiang-hai and the others went to is really similar to a dog's kennel. Life in an American university is really good. What? Life in an American university is really good? If you are thinking the wrong way, I will tip you 10 coins, thank you. I'm going to take a shower first. Do you want to sit and wait for a while? Looking at Jiang-hai who is looking at her room, Kelly can't help but smile. When she came in just now, she already took the things for washing up and a new set of clothes. She looked at Jiang-hai and said sweetly, "How about let's go together?" Looking at Kelly in front of him, Jiang-hai also said with a smile, "Then okay." Originally, Jiang-hai said it half-jokingly, but he didn't expect Kelly to not reject. Instead, she blushed and gently bit her lower lip. She looked at Jiang-hai and said softly. Chapter 7:14. Although men and women had different structures, in a sense, some of their needs in life were also mutual. However, the difference between men and women was that the younger a man was, the better his body, and the more needs he had. On the other hand, the older a woman was, the more she needed. Kelly Sauron did not have a boyfriend at this time. Her boyfriend was only Jiang-hai. However, Jiang-hai had a lot of people who could help him with some of his needs, but Kelly Sauron did not. Yesterday, she thought she could do something with Jiang-hai, but because of Delia's incident, she had to watch Jiang-hai leave. Now that he was finally in her territory, she would not let Jiang-hai go easily. After the two entered the bathroom, they hugged each other crazily. What happened later couldn't be written in detail. They only knew that they stayed in the bathroom for more than an hour. After they came out, they didn't return to their normal state. Instead, they rolled to the place where Kelly slept and continued the war. The sound of war continued to roar in this bedroom. "I love you." Kelly Sauron hugged Jiang-hai tightly and hung on Jiang-hai like a koala bear. Her hands were around Jiang-hai's neck. She now wished she could spend every minute and every second with Jiang-hai, feeling Jiang-hai's soul and body. She was not sure what was between her and Jiang-hai. Was it because she liked Jiang-hai's power, his money, or his person? She was not sure, but this did not prevent her from being with Jiang-hai. Sometimes, young people should be more impulsive. However, at this time, Jiang-hai's ears suddenly moved. He heard the sound of the door opening. Before he could react, the door of Kelly's bedroom was opened from the outside. In an instant, Jiang-hai and Kelly looked at the door. At the door, a girl about 1.7 meters tall, with long blonde hair, good looks, but wearing a pair of black-rimmed glasses and a checkered jacket stood there stupidly. She looked at Jiang-hai and Kelly, and even the connection between them was clearly seen. "Hi, Jenny." Looking at the girl standing in front of her, Kelly Sauron took a deep breath and said to the girl named Jenny at the door. Hearing Kelly's words, the girl also reacted, smiled awkwardly, and then left the room. "I'm really sorry." After saying this, Jenny closed the door again Hey, sorry to disturb you. You should have gone to the hotel with me. Looking at Kelly in front of him, Jiang Hai said with some embarrassment. It's okay. She probably went out for a stroll. Let's continue. It turned out that Kelly would not let go of Jiang Hai easily. She did not have such a relationship with the opposite sex around her. She couldn't help but use a little force and whispered in Jiang Hai's ear. Feeling Kelly's movements, Jiang Hai also rushed forward again. Perhaps they were afraid that Jenny would come back at any time, so the two also sped up their pace. But at this time, the door of the bedroom opened again, but Jiang Hai and Kelly had no way to stop. Looking at Jiang Hai and Kelly's movements, the girl named Jenny could not help but be a little confused. She didn't go outside just now, but waited at the door. Her idea was that since Jiang Hai and Kelly were interrupted by her, they would probably restrain themselves and take advantage of this time to put on their clothes. Who knew that the two not only did not stop, but also sped up. Seeing that the two were not in the mood to pay attention to her this time, Jenny couldn't help but swallow hard. Then, as if she was afraid that Kelly's voice would be heard, she closed the door again. Soon after the door was closed, the battle inside also ended. The two hugged each other and lay on Kelly's bed. About 10 minutes later, Kelly put on her clothes and opened the door. She looked at Jenny with a somewhat depressed and awkward gaze. As for Jenny's face, the awkwardness was about to disappear. Standing outside the door just now, her mind was full of the scene of Jiang Hai and Kelly's battle just now. She was already a little confused. It's still time for class, why are you back? At this time, Jiang Hai had already put on his clothes and was opening the window to let out the smell just now. But the smell was still quite strong, making Jenny unable to stand it. But Kelly didn't care and looked at Jenny and asked, "Oh, today, Professor Malafai has something to do, so the afternoon class is self-study. I also have nothing to do, so I came back to rest. So sorry." After hearing Kelly's words, Jenny lowered her head, carefully looked at Kelly and Jiang Hai, and said timidly, Okay, look at your pitiful appearance, no one blames you." Looking at the appearance of this girl named Jenny, Kelly couldn't help but sigh. When will this girl's character change? Really troublesome. Cough, the movie is about to start. Listening to Kelly and Jenny's words, Jiang Hai was also a little embarrassed at this time. He pointed to his watch and whispered to Kelly. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Kelly couldn't help but look at the time. Indeed, it's about to start, there's still half an hour left. After they arrive, they still have to change tickets, find seats, buy some water and so on. Time is indeed a bit tight. Yes, it's too late. By the way, if you have nothing to do, come out and play with us. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Kelly immediately put on her clothes. But when she saw Jenny, she couldn't help but say something. When she said this, not only Jenny was stunned, but also Jiang Hai was stunned. Bringing such a third wheel what kind of way is this? I'll forget it. Hearing Kelly's words, Jenny muttered in a low voice. Didn't you say that you want to watch the fantasy forest? Why are you scared? Let's go. Kelly also regretted after saying this, but since she already said it, and it can be seen that Jenny is a little moved, so she pulled Jenny up and looked at Jiang Hai. Since she already said it, Jiang Hai can't say no, so he can only shrug his shoulders and say whatever she wants. I've already bought the tickets, let's go. Looking at Jiang Hai's indifferent look and Jenny's somewhat hesitant look, Kelly couldn't help but take out her mobile phone and look at the location of the movie they are going to watch. It's really lucky, there's just an empty seat next to them. So Kelly bought it, then after showing it to Jenny, she pulled her out. Jenny saw that Kelly was so serious, and Jiang Hai didn't look like a bad guy. So she followed them out of the teaching building and sat behind Jiang Hai's pickup truck. Generally speaking, the people sitting in the back won't wear seat belts. First, it's too tight, and second, it's not that dangerous. However, after this girl named Jenny got in the car, she directly fastened her seat belt, then looked at Jiang Hai and Kelly sitting in front timidly. Looking at this girl's appearance, Jiang Hai can't help but feel a little funny. Why is she so timid? Let me introduce, this is Jiang Hai, he's my friend. This is Jenny Pond. She's my roommate. She's also at B City University, the same year as me. She's also a senior this year and will graduate soon. Don't be fooled by her appearance. She's a straight A student. Her academic results are among the best in the whole school. But her personality is a problem. She's too introverted. Seeing the car start to move smoothly, Kelly also introduced the girl named Jenny Pond to the two. But she mainly introduced the girl named Jenny Pond. Listening to Kelly's introduction, Jiang Hai also had some understanding of this girl, who looked a little rustic, but was very strong. This girl came from New Jersey. Compared to New York and B-City, New Jersey was indeed a lot worse. Although it was only separated from New York by a river, whether it was economically or geographically, it was far behind. Jiang Hai wasn't clear about this girl's family situation, but if it could make her feel so inferior, it probably wasn't too good. However, although this girl was extremely introverted and self-abased, she had always believed in a sentence, knowledge is power. So her academic results were obvious to all. She should have gone to a better school. But when she graduated from high school, she was too nervous during the exam and had a fever in the examination room. Even if she performed less than 30% of her standard, she still went to B-City University. However, B-City University's standard wasn't that bad. In the U.S. World University Rankings, B-City University was ranked 32nd in the world this year, while the highest-ranking university in Huaxia, Imperial Capital University, was ranked 41st, and Shuimu University was ranked 49th. It could be said that a top student who could go to B-City University was basically at the level of existence in the country. After being a top student for 4 years, she went to the best major here, the School of Business Management. Now she was about to graduate in her 4th year. Logically speaking, with her professional knowledge, there should have been a company hiring her long ago. In fact, this was the case, whether it was recommended by a mentor or the companies themselves. Since her junior year, no less than 30 companies had come to look for her, including many companies in the world's top 500. Even the Walmart Group, which was related to Jiang Hai, had sent someone to look at her, and even promised her a chance to be promoted quickly when she entered the company. However, the biggest problem was that this girl was too dumb. This was somewhat similar to the top students in Huaxia. You could ask her to write something, and you could ask her to do research on her own. However, when you asked her to go to an interview and introduce herself to the interviewer, she was stupid. So, she failed all the interviews. At first she didn't pass, but later, she was so shy that she didn't go. These big companies also had their own face problems. If you didn't come, they naturally wouldn't come to inform you. So she hadn't found a job until now. It was also because of her personality that she had almost no friends in school. The only person she could talk to was Kelly Solon. Looking at the person behind him, Jiang Hai was a little surprised. Could this person be a talent? If she was really a talent, it wouldn't be bad if he could get her into the Tunglong company. If you need a job, you can consider my company. My company has just been established, and its main business project is to promote the things in my manor, such as beef, fish, seafood, and so on. Another project is logistics, mainly to send these things around the world. The company has just been established, and everything is still quite new. If you are interested, you can go and take a look. After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai said tentatively, this could be considered as giving face to Kelly. Of course, if this girl was really capable, then Jiang Hai wouldn't mind letting her earn a lot, just like Chi Li's assistant. Well, Jiang Hai forgot her name again. However, this didn't prevent this guy from earning a lot now. If the company was profitable in the future, Jiang Hai wouldn't be stingy. Is this really okay? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Jenny Pond asked eagerly. She had no choice but to do so. After all, she couldn't find a job, so she was under a lot of pressure. Recently, she didn't dare to call home, because every time she called, she would talk about her job. Her family's condition wasn't very good. If she couldn't find a job, she would graduate from college and go home with her tail between her legs. At that time, her life would become very bleak. She could go to work, but she really didn't have the confidence to introduce herself. She really couldn't pass the interview. Of course. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai smiled, and then took out a business card. The business card had his company's address on it. Jiang Hai didn't have such a thing before. But after all, he had established a company, and the company was fully controlled by him. Therefore, he also printed some business cards with the position of the chairman. The outside of the business card was gilded, and one of them cost $2. Jiang Hai printed a total of 1,000 of them, and only a few of them were sent out. Just go to the address on it. If you have nothing to do tomorrow, take her to have a look. After seeing Jenny Pond take the business card, Jiang Hai looked at Kelly with a smile. Kelly was also very willing to help, so she naturally agreed. At this time Jenny, who was sitting in the back row, finally showed a smile on her face. She didn't expect that such an awkward meeting would end up with such a good result. Looking at the business card in her hand, she looked at Jiang Hai. It seems that this man should be a good person. Chapter 7:15. This should be the place mentioned on the business card. Looking at the business card in her hand, Jenny Pond carefully looked at the office building in front of her and said with some worry. The hand holding Jiang Hai's business card trembled unconsciously. Yesterday, she went to play with Jiang Hai and the others. After watching a movie, Jiang Hai also treated them to a meal. After eating, Jiang Hai sent them back to their dormitory. Maybe because she exercised too much during the day, Kelly Solon fell asleep after her head touched the pillow. Instead, Jenny Pond recalled the scene she saw during the day. The smell of Jiang Hai and Kelly had not completely dispersed yet, so she could not fall asleep. She was in a daze and fell asleep around 12 o'clock, but because she had something on her mind, she got up at 6 o'clock in the morning. After washing up, she specifically checked the situation of the Tunglong company. After making enough preparations, it was already 8 o'clock. Kelly got up at around 7 o'clock. Originally, she wanted to go with Jenny, but Jenny Pound was unwilling to do so. This time, no matter what, she wanted to find a job and rely on her own abilities. So she did not ask Kelly to accompany her. Instead, after preparing herself, she went downstairs for breakfast and took the subway to the office building that Jiang Hai mentioned. Downstairs, she took a deep breath and then summoned up the courage to walk into the office building. When she walked in, there was a girl who looked about the same age as her waiting for the elevator. However, compared to her, this woman was completely different. She had an overbearing aura, wore a decent office lady's uniform, and her hair was meticulously combed behind her head. She was holding a document bag, and standing there gave people a very sharp feeling. Compared to Jenny, it was really the feeling of an elite and a country girl. Jenny Pond also knew that she was going to have an interview today, so she deliberately wore a set of clothes that she saved money to buy. However, it was still very old-fashioned. It was a slightly loose woman's suit, and it was gray in color. The one-step skirt was also not very appropriate. At first glance, it felt like someone else's clothes and not hers. In fact, it was indeed someone else's clothes. She had bought it from a senior who had graduated last year. Before the senior left, she had sold this set of clothes, which was worth $1,000, for only $300. She had hesitated for a long time before she was willing to buy it. However, this set of clothes was indeed a lot worse than the ones she had made before. Standing next to this woman, Jenny Pond felt even more inferior and unconsciously took 2 steps back. But fortunately this time she did not escape. Soon the elevator arrived. As the elevator door opened, Jenny Pond and the woman also walked in. But as soon as they entered the elevator, Jenny Pond took the initiative to hide in the corner. After the woman saw Jenny Pond, she was stunned for a moment, then smiled kindly, and the original sharp feeling disappeared a little. Which floor? Looking at Jenny Pond, the woman asked softly. 1717, thank you. Hearing the woman's question, Jenny Pond said with some worry. 17? Tunglong Company? What are you going there for? Hearing her words, the woman was stunned for a moment, and after pressing the 15 and 17 buttons, she asked her strangely, I'm here to apply for a job. Hearing her words, Jenny Pond slowly gathered her courage and said to her. Hearing what she said, the woman here was stunned for a moment, then smiled kindly. It's a bit troublesome for you to apply for a job like this, Don't be nervous, the boss on the 17th floor. Well, he's not a bad guy, but his manager is very strict. If there are any problems, you can come downstairs and find me. My name is Penelope Daller. Looking at the little girl's nervous look, the woman here also smiled and said, Yes, this woman is none other than Penelope Daller, the daughter of Burke Daller in Jiang Hai's manor. She has some hostility towards her in Jiang Hai, but she knows Jiang Hai is indeed a good boss. And to some extent, the reason why she has her current status is inseparable from Jiang Hai. Looking at the gold-stamped business card in Jenny Pan's hand, she knows that this girl should be favored by Jiang Hai. Therefore, it didn't matter if he helped her if he could. Okay, thank you, Miss Daller. Hearing Penelope's kind words, Jenny Pan said immediately, You're welcome. Hearing her words, Penelope Daller also smiled, then said, But at this time, the elevator also reached the 15th floor. After making a cheering gesture to Jenny, she got off the elevator and left. Jenny took a deep breath. The elevator door opened again, and it was already the 17th floor. Hello, how can I help you? As soon as she came out of the elevator, the receptionist who was cleaning up the front desk looked at her with a smile and asked her unexpectedly, because it seems that she is not here to talk about business. I'm here to apply for a job. This is my resume, and this is given to me by the person who asked me to apply for a job. Hearing the receptionist's words, Jenny Pan was taken aback, but she still walked over timidly. After taking out her resume from the file bag, she deliberately put the business card that had been crumpled by her. Although the receptionist has not seen Jiang Hai in person, she still knows the gold-stamped business card. But she still knew about this gold-stamped business card. If Jiang Hai himself came, she might not be able to recognize it, but she knew about Jiang Hai's business card. Please come with me. Since the chairman wants to recruit someone, she naturally did not dare to be slow. After smiling, she led Jenny Pan to a reception room next to her and helped her get a cup of coffee. Now President Zheng still has a business to discuss. Please wait here first, I will go and inform him. After looking at Jenny kindly with a smile, the receptionist left and went to the room of Zheng Jin, the assistant of Qi Li whose name Jiang Hai never remembered. She knocked gently on the door. After getting permission, she went in to explain the situation. After Zheng Jin heard the words of the receptionist, she glanced at Jiang Hai's business card and the stack of resumes she brought in. Looking at this stack of resumes, Zheng Jin was a little surprised. It was not because this stack of resumes was too simple, but because this stack of resumes was too good. If this person is really like what is said on the resume, of course, these things can be easily found out. If these are all true, then how could this person be interested in the Tunglong company? Could it be that Jiang Hai specially recruited someone? Okay, I got it. I will go and take a look. After thinking for a while, Zheng Jin decided to take a look herself. After talking to the receptionist, Zheng Jin went to the reception room after dealing with some documents. When she came in, she found Jenny sitting there, nervously reciting her self-introduction. Looking at this girl, Zheng Jin couldn't help but be a little absent-minded, as if she saw herself in the past. Hello. But after a moment of absent-mindedness, Zheng Jin had already pushed the door open and walked in. As soon as she saw Zheng Jin coming in, Jenny Pond immediately stood up nervously, and then stuttered a little. My name is Jenny Pond, a fresh graduate from the Boston Business Administration Department. I am here for an interview. Looking at Zheng Jin, who looked like a successful person, Jenny Pond said nervously, and her tongue curled a little. Don't be so nervous, sit down and talk. Looking at her appearance, Zheng Jin chuckled, then sat opposite her, took the resume and looked at it. To be honest, the content on this resume was really good. Fresh graduate from the Boston Business Administration College, has completed the graduation thesis. The professor of the college has evaluated A+. The first grade evaluation is A+. The second grade evaluation is A+. The first grade evaluation is A+. The first grade evaluation is A+. The second grade evaluation is A+. The first grade evaluation is A+. The first grade evaluation is A+. The second grade evaluation is A+. The first grade evaluation is A+. The first grade evaluation is A+. The first grade evaluation is A+. The second grade evaluation is A+. The first grade evaluation is... Ahem, Miss Pond. To be honest, your resume is very good, very beautiful. But I am a little curious. Why did you agree to come to our company? You know, our company has just been established. With your resume, I think any company in the world that does business and trade will not be stingy in giving you a position and promotion opportunities. Slowly reading some of the evaluations in these resumes, Zhang Jin asked with some doubts. Because I am not too outgoing, so I lost a lot of interview opportunities. After I accidentally met Mr. Jiang yesterday, Mr. Jiang said that I can come here and try. I will work hard, please believe me. Looking at Zhang Jin in front of her, Jenny Pond felt more tongue-tied and said in a daze. To be honest, our company has just been established, and we really need talents. With only your resume, I will hire you. Not to mention you have the recommendation of our chairman. But as you said, your personality is indeed a bit troublesome. This is the United States. To be honest, your personality may not work well in the more introverted Huaxia, let alone the United States. But I am willing to give you a chance. I have 3 jobs here you can choose. Looking at Jenny Pond, Zhang Jin said seriously. First, you'll be our data archivist here. You don't need to interact with too many people, and your main job is to manage the data. Your weekly salary for the first 3 months will be $700, and you'll have 2 days off every week. We'll pay for your unemployment insurance, and you'll pay for your medical and social insurance yourself. You'll get a daily allowance of $30, food and transportation, and dividends will be calculated separately. Looking at Jenny Pond, Zhang Jingxian first mentioned a job that didn't require any interaction with people. But there are fewer opportunities for promotion in the first job. The second job is classified management, which means that you have to manage orders and arrange flights. There aren't many opportunities to meet people, but there are a lot of phone calls. The weekly salary for the first 3 months is $750, and the allowance is still $30. Business trips and things like that are calculated separately. This opportunity for promotion is better than the first job. The last job is the front desk job. To be honest, it's the best place to train people. Actually, I also had your current situation. You don't speak after meeting people. It's a little too autistic. In fact, you don't need to be like this at all. If you adapt to the front desk for 3 months, as long as you change your introverted habit, you can directly go back to the classified management and become a team leader. Looking at Jenny Pond in front of him, Zhang Jin said seriously. Hearing his words, Jenny Pond couldn't help but open her mouth. Then she hesitated for a moment. I recommend you to choose the third job. If you can't do it, during this period, you can change jobs with me at any time. With your ability and the chairman's name card, I will give you a chance to change. Seeing that Jenny Pond was still a little hesitant, Zhang Jin also said seriously, Thank you, Chief Zhang. I will work hard. Maybe it was because of Zhang Jin's words, or maybe it was because she remembered that she had to work hard to change this job. Jenny Pond finally accepted Zhang Jin's recommendation. She was ready to go to the front desk. Looking at her, Zhang Jin also chuckled. He had a feeling that she would definitely succeed. He called the girl who brought Jenny Pond in at the front desk and asked her to bring her to the front desk first to familiarize herself with the work. After work in the evening, he brought her to do her hair and change her clothes. Although it was not necessary to be flamboyant, as a professional woman, she also had to have her own beautiful side. To be honest, Jenny Pond was not too interested in Zhang Jin's arrangement. She felt that her clothes were quite good. It was loose and not too late. Most importantly, it was cheap. However, after coming to a company, everything could not be cheap. Sometimes, the company's image was also very important. Jenny Pond was also very clear about this point. Therefore, although she was a little reluctant, she did not refuse because she also knew that this was also a kind of corporate culture. Since she could not resist, then she would try to accept it. At this time, Jiang Hai did not know about this inspirational scene in the Tunglong company. Speaking of which, he did not believe that there was anything inspirational in this world. He always thought that inspirational words were nonsense and a lie, because in the beginning, he had nothing to do with inspirational words at all. The reason why he changed from a stinky loser to what he was now was all because of his cheat. At this time he was busy. Yes, he was also busy, because today was really busy. There was no special reason. It was just that his fish had become popular. Chapter 7:16. It was the third day of the Boston Fish Exhibition. Just like the beef exhibition that Jiang Hai attended last time, the exhibition would only last for 7 days. However, only the first 5 days were for the exhibition. The last 2 days were for the selection. Although Jiang Hai had already reserved the gold medal for the quality category, he still needed to follow the necessary procedures. However, on the third day of the exhibition, Jiang Hai's restaurant ushered in a small climax, mainly because of Ellis Ballier yesterday. Needless to say, Jiang Hai's fish was sold in this restaurant. He was the first person to eat the crab, but it turned out that the crab tasted quite good. Yesterday was not a holiday, and there were no activities, but the restaurant's turnover for the day was 3 times the usual. There were no secrets in the food and beverage industry, because everyone knew how much money they earned. Perhaps they didn't know the specifics, but with such a large sales volume, it was impossible for them not to know. At noon, they sold nearly twice the usual amount. In the evening, the demand was even more than the supply. Yesterday, when the buyer left, he deliberately bought all of Jiang Hai's remaining fish. Even the fish that Edward Anderson used to attract people were gone. At night, Edward Anderson and the others only brought back a pile of empty boxes. Of course, they caught more fish at night. This morning, Jiang Hai drove the F-750 to deliver the fish to the restaurant. When the fish were unloaded, the people there gave Jiang Hai $80,000 without hesitation. This was the money for today's fish. In addition to American redfish, jade spot, longju and salmon, they also bought a lot of spotted shrimp, 2 lobsters and 3 king crabs. Because it wasn't a private sale, there was no way to round off the change, and the money had to be rounded up. After confirming that the money had been received, Jiang Hai left. However, when he arrived at the dock, he found a lot of people crowded outside his exhibition hall. These people only had one identity: buyers. If we buy a lot of American redfish, can it be cheaper? Can you confirm the daily amount of salmon? How many days can this lobster live? If we buy lobsters, can the other fish be cheaper? Looking at the swarms of buyers, Edward Anderson couldn't handle it. After all, he wasn't a professional in selling these things. He was a professional in this field. Jiang Hai and Prawalton had already set the price for him to take out. Sometimes he could even give them a small discount. But now, all these people were coming to him to talk about these things. He was a little confused. Fortunately, Jiang Hai arrived at this time. Edward Anderson couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. "Boss, they're all here to stock up on goods. Why don't you talk to them? I can't handle it anymore." Looking at these guys who seemed to want to eat him alive, Edward Anderson immediately hid beside Jiang Hai and said with a dumbfounded expression. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai was also a little confused. After these buyers heard that Jiang Hai was the boss, their eyes lit up, and they subconsciously wanted to rush over. But Peter's was Jiang Hai's thick wall. When he saw these people rushing over, he instantly blocked them. "What's the matter? Line up and speak one by one." Looking at these guys with shining eyes, Jiang Hai also said loudly. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the people outside couldn't help but mutter, but looking at Kners and Peters' size, they wisely chose to line up. I'm a buyer for XX Seafood Restaurant. We want to buy your seafood. How much is this price?" Seeing these people calm down, Jiang Hai winked at Peters and let the first person in. After this person came in, he said to Jiang Hai, "The price is written outside." Hearing his words, Jiang Hai pointed to the sign hanging there indifferently. Looking at Jiang Hai, this person quietly leaned in front of Jiang Hai and whispered to Jiang Hai, "Ahem, we can sign a long-term supply contract. Of course, the premise is that your seafood must be of good quality. In this case, can you give me an internal price?" Looking at Jiang Hai, this person quietly leaned in front of Jiang Hai and whispered to Jiang Hai, Sorry, we don't sell at retail here. This is the wholesale price. If you can buy, think about what to buy and tell me. If you still need to think about it, don't block the people behind you. What is a rare commodity? What is a monopoly? Jiang Hai's attitude is really bad. Don't buy his things if you have the guts. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, this person couldn't help but be a little annoyed. In fact, these buyers are in a very profitable business. They are knowledgeable about who they buy from. In the restaurant, they are the first people to buy. Generally speaking, American red fish is close to $9 per kilogram. If this restaurant buys the fish from Jiang Hai's manor, then Jiang Hai will definitely give this person something. Of course, this is not a bribe. It is similar to a commission agreement. 1 kilogram is $9 on the book, but in fact, it may be $8 or 80 cents or something. 20 cents of it goes into his pocket. This is the so-called internal price. Unfortunately, Jiang Hai doesn't buy it. He has to act like he doesn't have to worry about selling his things. He really doesn't have to worry about selling them. Fish is different from beef. Beef will be old in 2 years, but the bigger the fish, the more expensive it will be. Therefore, Jiang Hai is not in a hurry. As soon as he heard Jiang Hai's words, the man couldn't help but become angry out of shame. But when he saw that more and more people were gathering, and then he remembered that the boss had ordered him to buy it, he couldn't help but feel discouraged. The food and beverage industry has always been difficult to manage. What others have, you have to have, not to mention something as important as the ingredients. The taste is there, and it can't be compared with the existence of craftsmanship. Some small shops may not care about this, but in the eyes of high-end restaurants, since Jiang Hai's fish has appeared, it is indispensable. In the end, he sighed helplessly and ordered some fish first. After receiving Jiang Hai's order, he wrote down the fish he wants tomorrow. 150 kilograms of American red fish is worth $7,000. 100 kilograms of grouper is worth $6,000. 100 kilograms of anchovies is worth $6,000. 100 kilograms of anchovies is worth $6,000. And 50 kilograms of salmon is worth $5,000. Just these 4 fish are worth $24,500. Together with some other bream, edged fish and spotted shrimp, this person ordered $31,000. This is only for 1 day. After he orders the fish, it will be a month's supply. He can only add more, not less. If he wants to add more, he has to give a day's notice. With the first person to sign, the people who come later don't talk nonsense. After they come, they directly take the order. They all ordered a month's supply in advance. If there are any changes, the contract can be terminated in advance. Jiang Hai doesn't care about this one, because he doesn't believe that his fish can be compared to anyone. It's that simple. Boston is a gathering place for seafood restaurants. There are many high-end seafood restaurants here. In a short time, Jiang Hai has a small stack of orders in his hands. There are as many as a dozen restaurants. Some of these restaurants have fewer orders, but they are similar to the first one. They have orders of around $30,000 a day. Some have orders of $40,000 or $50,000 a day. On average, each order is about $37,000. Including the order from Restaurant L yesterday, there are 15 restaurants in total. This is $55,500 a day. After deducting taxes, labor, and diesel, there are about $300,000 a day left. That's $10 million a month and $120 million a year. And this is only the money provided to the seafood restaurants in Boston. If you add the fish provided to Prawalton and the Shanghai supermarket, Chile in China doesn't need these fish for the time being. That's because people in China don't care if the salmon they eat is Atlantic salmon or chum salmon. In China, the big yellow croakers, Yangtze River fish, and Chinese Bahamas fish are the ones that sell at a high price. When these fish become bigger, it will be time to harvest the money in China. Just by selling ordinary fish, Jiang Hai's annual income is about $1 billion. This is talking about net income, not taxes. If taxes were calculated, the fish from these restaurants alone can provide Jiang Hai with about $200 million. Prawalton wants at least 10 times, which is $2 billion. However, tax evasion is very serious in the United States. Not counting taxes, Jiang Hai can make $1 billion a year from these fish. He has to admit that the fish is selling fast after he becomes famous. There is no shortage of rich people in this world. No matter how expensive something is, as long as it is unique, people will buy it. For example, bluefin tuna, blue marlin, green marlin, and so on. Excluding the domestic market, Jiang Hai's income from the foreign market alone is about $1.3 billion, which is more than the income from beef. Even if the price of cattle is doubled, it will still be the same. Moreover, in 2 years, the big yellow croakers, Chinese bahabas, and Yangtze River fish can be sold in China. He can make at least $500 or $600 million a year. And this is the product of two-way charges. To be honest, Jiang Hai's business seems to be getting bigger and bigger. Boss, we're rich this time. After signing the receipt, Edward Anderson came to Jiang Hai's side with a smile. To be honest, he was really anxious when he saw the people on the ranch making money all day long. But now that the fish are sold, all the problems are solved. Yes, this time the fishing and beef should be very stable on both sides, but now there is a problem. That is, are we running out of fishermen and cowboys? Jiang Hai asked Edward Anderson after receiving the receipt. There is indeed a shortage of fishermen. Hiring 2 or 3 more should be enough. Thinking about it, now that the 5 of them are rotating, if they don't fish every day, they can still rotate. However, now that they fish every day, it is indeed a little unsustainable. For a fishing boat to operate normally, it first needs a captain, a person to watch the sonar, a person to operate the crane, and some people to divide the fish. The more people there are, the faster they can catch the fish. However, Edward Anderson and the others only have 5 people. They can handle it if they are busy, but there are too few people. They can be busy for a few days, but they can't handle it all the time. If there are 2 or 3 more people who can take turns to get off work, it will be much better. They can catch fish for 2 days and rest for a day. Basically, they can take turns with physical fitness. As for the people who can drive the boat, this is easy to deal with. There are not many fishermen who can fly planes, but there are quite a few who can drive boats, and their skills are quite good. Then let's hire some more fishermen. I will move Aphrodite and the others into my villa. This way, there will be 4 small villas empty. Each villa has 4 rooms, and we can recruit a total of 16 people. Even if 1 person lives on 1 floor, we can still recruit 8 people. After you go back, discuss with Robbins Garcia, and see how many cowboys and fishermen are suitable for us. Hearing Robbins Garcia say that they should recruit some fishermen, Jiang Hai also nodded. The manor is expanding, and it is inevitable to recruit more people. But the candidates must be chosen carefully. Don't worry about this, Robbins Garcia and I are both old here. We can't recruit those who like to gamble, those who have a bad temper, and those who drink too much. Now that the United States has not recovered from the economic crisis, if we want to recruit good sailors and cowboys, there are really a lot of them. After hearing Jiang Hai's concerns, Edward Anderson patted his chest loudly. Everyone knew about the treatment in the Jiang Hai manor. All the cowboys and sailors were sharpening their heads, trying to drill in. With the salary of more than $1 million a year, no one would shrink back. Therefore, Edward Anderson and Robbins Garcia were now quite confident. As long as they spread the word that Jiang Hai's manor was hiring, all the sailors and cowboys in the United States would line up in a row for them to choose from. This was the most direct attraction of the dollar. Hearing Edward Anderson's words, Jiang Hai also smiled. Indeed, in the United States, no, in the world, there were very few bosses who were as generous as him. He ate the best quality beef, and enjoyed an income that even doctors could not reach. They made more money for Jiang Hai, so Jiang Hai naturally did not mind reciprocating their efforts. Of course, the premise was that they had to work hard enough. Jiang Hai was not running a charity. If anyone had any bad intentions, Jiang Hai would not be merciful when dealing with them. In the next few days, I'll discuss with Robbins Garcia first. After this fishing exhibition, we'll recruit people. Looking at Jiang Hai, Edward Anderson was now a little eager to give it a try. Chapter 717. Ai Xiaoxi exhaled gently and opened her eyes in a daze. She looked at Jiang Hai's three-dimensional face and couldn't help but chuckle when the first ray of sunlight shone in her eyes. Then she gently kissed Jiang Hai's cheek. She raised her head and looked at Feng Yunqian, who was still snoring beside her, as well as Bridget and Janice, who were the youngest. She slowly sat up, and the thin silk quilt slipped off her body smoothly. However, she didn't mind showing off her beautiful figure. After stretching, she quietly got out of bed and walked barefoot into the bathroom next to her. She closed the door and washed up. Ai Xiaoxi's imagination ran wild as she casually let the warm water flow over her body. Ai Xiaoxi had been in Jiang Hai's soaring dragon manor for almost a month. However, apart from the first few days, Jiang Hai had gone out to participate in a competition for 10 days. Apart from that, she could see Jiang Hai every day even if she didn't sleep beside him. To be honest, Ai Xiaoxi felt a little lazy living like this. Her daily life was very simple. After washing up in the morning, she would have breakfast. Then, she would go to the vegetable garden or the vineyard in the morning to see if there was anything she could help with. After that, she would have lunch at noon. In the afternoon, she would stay at home, play with the dog, play with the guinea pig, ride a horse, stroll along the riverside path, stroll along the beach, or even go out to sea by herself. Of course, if she wanted to go out to sea, she couldn't go alone. Azalina had to go with her. She felt that this kind of life was too decadent. Every day, she lived a fulfilling and satisfying life. If she were a strong career woman, she would probably be dissatisfied with this kind of life. If this was a vacation, it would be perfect. However, if it wasn't a vacation, it would be too boring. There was no sense of tension in life, and there was no pressure at all. This would drive strong career women crazy, but she enjoyed it very much. The only problem was that there were too many women around Jiang Hai. Besides her, there was Feng Yunqian and Qi Li's two younger sisters. Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunqian had already known about their relationship with Jiang Hai when they were in Ice City. However, they didn't intend to tell Qi Li about this. After all, Qi Li was always so arrogant and bossy, who said that women would be as close as sisters and coexist harmoniously after the Crystal Palace was opened. On the surface, there wouldn't be any problems. However, the struggle in private had never stopped. Besides Qi Jie, Qi Ye and Feng Yunqian, there was also a group of people in Jiang Hai's villa. They were Aphrodite and the others. Feng Yunqian and Ai Xiaoxi were actually very familiar with Aphrodite and the others. After all, the reason why Aphrodite and Jiang Hai could do that in the beginning was because of them. It was precisely because of this that Aphrodite and the others had the best relationship with Feng Yunqian and Ai Xiaoxi. They were very strict about their positions. They were only Jiang Hai's servants, and these four were Jiang Hai's girlfriends. It was precisely because of this that Ai Xiaoxi didn't care too much about their existence. Moreover, they had a good relationship with each other. Unlike Qi Jie and Qi Ye, Qi Ye was fine. As a chef, she had a good relationship with everyone in the villa. However, Qi Jie didn't have a good relationship with Aphrodite and the others. It was precisely because of this that Aphrodite and the others would also repay Ai Xiaoxi and the others in some ways. For example, there were a total of 4 women who were confirmed to be in a relationship with Jiang Hai. Prawalton, Feng Yunqian, and Selena Gomez were all eliminated. Only 4 women, Qi Li, Qi Jie, Qi Ye, and Ai Xiaoxi were left. Among these 4, whoever got pregnant with Jiang Hai's child first would undoubtedly have a lot of advantages. However, Qi Li was still in Huaxia at this time, so she couldn't come over. In a situation where Qi Jie, Qi Ye, and Ai Xiaoxi were competing with each other, Aphrodite and Aphrodite would not be able to come over. When Aphrodite and the others were doing something unspeakable with Jiang Hai, they would give it to Ai Xiaoxi in the end. These days, Ai Xiaoxi definitely absorbed the most. Touching her lower abdomen, Ai Xiaoxi didn't know if she would be pregnant. But this was also a direction that she could work towards. While she was imagining things, Feng Yunqian also walked into the bathroom with a yawn. Then, she directly sat on the toilet to solve the problem that she had in the morning. "Oh, you're up early." She was groggy, and when she turned around, she saw Ai Xiaoxi and said with a smile, "You're the one who got up too late." Hurry up and get up, we have to go for a run. Ai Xiaoxi rolled her eyes at Feng Yinshan and said somewhat reproachfully, "Sigh, I don't want to move." Hearing Ai Xiaoxi's words, Feng Yinshan helplessly held her forehead. These days, Ai Xiaoxi felt that her life had been too leisurely. As a model, although she had only been a model for about a year, she had developed the habit of maintaining a good figure. These days she had been eating delicacies every day and did not exercise much. She was afraid that she would gain weight. Seeing Qi Jia exercising every day, she also remembered it in her heart. She did not know how to train her muscles, but she did not know how to do kung fu. She also wouldn't take the initiative to ask Qi Jia to teach her, but jogging was a good choice. So these days, after waking up in the morning, she would drag Feng Yinshan to jog with her. Just like Jiang Hai's route, they would set off from the villa, run to the beach, and then come back. But unlike Jiang Hai's fast running speed, they ran much slower. They would start jogging around 6 in the morning and come back after 8. At that time, breakfast would have been finished. But fortunately, Qi Jia was very kind-hearted. She would leave them alone. If Qi Jia cared about this, she would be too lazy to care whether they ate or not. After taking a shower and brushing their teeth, Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yinshan put on their clothes and returned to their room. After changing into sportswear, they went out to jog. At this time, Aphrodite and the others had also woken up. Qi Jia was working out in the gym on the second floor. Qi Jia was studying today's menu, and Aphrodite and the others were cleaning up the villa. Ever since Jiang Hai told Aphrodite and the others to move in, Jiang Hai originally thought that they weren't very willing to move. After all, living alone with their own independent space would be much more comfortable. But he didn't expect Aphrodite and the others to agree immediately. The next day, Jiang Hai specially went to buy some things and changed the 4 largest guest rooms into 8 rooms of the same size. The guest rooms in Jiang Hai's villa were really too big. Each guest room was about 30 square meters or so. There was a bathroom, tables, chairs, and so on inside. Jiang Hai didn't make too much. He only added a wall in the middle of the room, then added an extra wardrobe, and things like a separate TV. After the renovation, this room was more than 10 square meters, but 2 people needed to share a bathroom. Aphrodite and the others didn't care about this. After the renovation of the house here was done, they moved in. After the end of the fishing exhibition, the 4 villas had been vacated. After moving into Jiang Hai's villa, Aphrodite and the others quickly adapted to their new identity. Every day, they would help to clean and tidy up the place. However, since Daliana and Marian's jobs were snatched away, everything seemed to be unstable. After sleeping until 8 o'clock in the morning, Jiang Hai yawned and walked down the stairs step by step. After walking down, he walked straight into the kitchen. Looking at the busy Qi Jia, he couldn't help but hug her from behind. "What are we eating this morning?" Feeling Jiang Hai's breath behind her, Qi Jia didn't struggle, but leaned on Jiang Hai's chest with enjoyment. "We're eating oatmeal this morning." Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Qi Jia pointed to the things in the pot in front of her and said with a smile, "We're eating this for fun again." Looking at the oatmeal in the pot, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little depressed. To be honest, people in China should be familiar with oatmeal, but it's actually a little strange. Oatmeal is a grass plant. It also exists in Huaxia. In the Compendium of Materia Medica, it is called brome and wild wheat. But in Huaxia, no one eats this thing. Even in the north, where oatmeal is the main food, no one eats this for fun. This was because the biggest problem with this thing was that it didn't shed its skin easily. Before there was a peeling machine, oatmeal was indeed not a very suitable food for human consumption. But after it could be peeled off, people found that oatmeal was actually quite good. The sugar content was very low, but it had high nutrition and energy. It was a high nutrition and high energy food. It was a very good food for the human body. For people with weak bodies, night sweats, and tuberculosis, this oatmeal was quite good. And because it was coarse fiber, it was good for the toilet. Whether it is the economic value or the nutritional value, it is much higher than normal staple foods such as wheat, rice, and corn. But Jiang Hai really didn't want to eat this thing, because it felt like it was cutting his throat. Eating this thing is good for the body, Chia said to Jiang Hai in a bad mood as she patted his hand on her stomach. Hearing Chia say so, Jiang Hai also knew that his resistance was useless, but it was good enough to have something to eat, so he wasn't too picky. When Jiang Hai came down, breakfast was almost ready. After waiting for a few more minutes, Aphrodite and the others came in and helped to take out the breakfast. Jiang Hai wasn't used to eating by himself and having others serve him, so when he ate at his house, everyone would always eat together. In addition to a large pot of oatmeal, Jiang Hai's breakfast also had a fried egg. This egg was cooked by the pheasants Jiang Hai caught. Because these pheasants ate the grass and insects here, the taste of their eggs was quite good. If it was sold in China, an egg would sell for less than 5 yuan. Jiang Hai would be at a disadvantage. In addition to the egg, there were also sausages. These sausages were all made in Jiang Hai's manner. The main workers were Mrs. Philemon and the others. These women didn't have anything to do in the winter. Originally, in the autumn, they could go to the seaside villa and the like and still have a job. But in the winter, not many people came to Winthrop to play, so naturally, there was no need for a villa. So they didn't have anything to do at home. So they took the beef that Jiang Hai and the others usually slaughtered. The best was naturally given to Jiang Hai, and some was given to the cowboys. In addition, there were some minced meat and standard commercial-grade beef. After they minced the meat, they made sausages. The most authentic beef sausages, smoked sausages, dried sausages, and the like. Ever since they made these sausages, Jiang Hai's breakfast often appeared these things. But he had to admit that the sausages made from minced meat tasted very good. A big bowl of oats, a fried egg, a fried sausage, a salad made from vegetables picked from the garden in the morning, and freshly baked bread and butter. To be honest, Jiang Hai wasn't dissatisfied with such a breakfast. After eating breakfast happily, Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yinchen ran in sweating. After greeting them, Jiang Hai left the villa, because he also had his own things to do, bringing along Xiao Bai and Xiao Huang, who hadn't appeared for a long time. Jiang Hai first went to the stable to see Xiao Xia, his shire horse. He brushed its teeth, took it out for a run, and fed it some carrots produced by the manor. Then, he went to the cowshed to find Robbins Garcia. They were going to discuss the recruitment matter. The fishing exhibition ended the day before yesterday. Jiang Hai's Soaring Dragon Manor naturally received the best evaluation, the gold medal for fish quality. Yesterday, Prawalton specifically called to determine the amount of seafood she wanted. Jiang Hai didn't know how many Sam's Club stores there were in the United States, but he knew that Prawalton had settled a total of 103 stores during this time. Each store had specially made a special booth for the Soaring Dragon Manor. The booth was divided into 2 parts, one for beef, and the other for seafood. There was nothing to say about the beef. It was just like last year, but the price was increased. As for the seafood, there were a lot of aquariums, and it was required to be restocked every 3 days. As soon as the contract was signed, the entire Walmart group, as well as Jiang Hai's Soaring Dragon Manor, started to move. Yesterday, Jiang Hai was arranging these matters. Today, Jiang Hai came to ask about the recruitment. In addition to asking Robbins Garcia, Edward Anderson was also very important. This was Jiang Hai's manor's first recruitment. After knowing the purpose of Jiang Hai's visit, Robbins Garcia began to think about it. Chapter 7:18. There's a shortage of cowboys, but it's not too big. After all, we're mostly active in the manor. With the help of the cattle dogs, it's not too bad. If you want to recruit people, it's naturally the best, but you don't have to recruit too many. 3 people are enough. After calculating in his heart, Robbins Garcia said to Jiang Hai. As he said, there were more than 20,000 cows in Jiang Hai's manor. These cows were naturally not enough if they were raised well. It would take almost 1,000 cowboys to raise them well. However, even though they were raised in such a rough manner, they still had enough meat. After all, there were still a lot of cattle dogs. But now that Jiang Hai said he wanted to recruit people, it was reasonable for them to recruit some people. Well, if the ranch wants to recruit 3 people, let's implement it soon. I'll go recruit tonight or tomorrow. Also, I'll look for Edward Anderson at the fish farm." After listening to Robbins Garcia's words, Jiang Hai also noted it down. If the ranch wanted to recruit 3 people, there would be more manpower available. He still had to ask at the fish farm. After saying goodbye to Robbins Garcia, Jiang Hai left the ranch directly and went to the dock. At this time, the dock was busy, but it was not about to go out to sea to fish, nor had it just finished fishing. Jiang Hai's fishermen were famous for their night work. Because they wanted to ensure the freshness of the fish, they had to get up and send the fish out in the dark the next morning, after fishing every night. Although they had not sent the fish from Prawalton Sam's Club, they still had not sent the fish out. But just the fish from a dozen restaurants would take an entire night. At 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, the fish would be sorted and sent to these restaurants with the F-750. Jiang Hai was thinking about whether to buy a berth at the Boston dock. When the time came, he would directly drive the boat there and let the fishermen take the fish themselves. It would be much more convenient, although he would have to spend more money. At this time, when Jiang Hai came, Edward Anderson and the others were there making fishing nets. These fishing nets had to be dried in the sun. Otherwise, they would rot easily after being soaked in the water all day long. A net cost tens of thousands of dollars, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Edward Anderson and the others cherished it very much. In addition to measuring the fishing nets, the others were not idle. They had been cleaning the boat and throwing away some household garbage. These garbage would not be thrown into the sea. If it was leftover rice and fish bones, it would be fine to throw it into the sea because the fish would eat it. But for some plastics and the like, those things could not be thrown away. They had to be transported out on land. Seeing Jiang Hai coming over, Edward Anderson couldn't help but stop his work and waved at Jiang Hai. "Hey boss, you're up." Seeing Jiang Hai coming over, Edward Anderson couldn't help but ask him. "Well, I was a little tired a few days ago." "Hehe, I see that you are also very tired. This time I came to ask about your recruitment." Looking at Edward Anderson, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Hearing about recruitment, Edward Anderson and the others' eyes lit up. It is indeed time to recruit some people. These people are a little tired these days. Shrugging, Edward Anderson glanced at the fishermen behind him, sighed, and said to Jiang Hai, "If they don't sleep every night, they can't make up for it during the day. If it weren't for Jiang Hai's good welfare and good food, even if they could bear it, their bodies would not be able to bear it. Well, let's see if we can recruit tonight or tomorrow." Hearing Edward Anderson's words, Jiang Hai also nodded. He didn't care about the small amount of money, but he didn't want to tire these people out. "Tonight, let's gather together to discuss the salary and benefits of the new recruits. Then, we'll spread the news of the recruitment. This way, when we go to recruit tomorrow, we'll definitely find more people than today." Looking at Jiang Hai's proposal, Edward Anderson thought for a moment, but rejected Jiang Hai's idea. Instead, he said to Jiang Hai. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment. Then he thought about it, and realized that Edward Anderson's words were quite reasonable. If he went to recruit people tonight, he would be blind. Those who had the ability and wanted to come might not come today, and the people he recruited might not be to his liking. Jiang Hai had always been a person who cut the Gordian knot. But this time, he felt that Edward Anderson was right. So he nodded and agreed to Edward Anderson's proposal. After talking with him for a while, Jiang Hai returned home with Xiao Huang and Xiao Bai. As soon as he came back, he saw Chirps in the distance holding a rabbit and landing on the roof of Jiang Hai's house. When it saw Jiang Hai, it couldn't help but call out a few times. Hearing its call, Jiang Hai waved at it. Seeing Jiang Hai's action, Chirps spread its wings and flew down from the roof, landing steadily on Jiang Hai's arm. For Chirps, it rarely stayed in the house except during winter. Since it learned to fly, it was quite wild, but fortunately it knew to come back every day. Since Chirps became wild, its little friend Dai Teeth was a little depressed. It couldn't find anyone to play with every day. Recently, it found the Greenland seal Whitehair. Jiang Hai didn't put this Greenland seal in the ocean, but put it in the swimming pool. Every day, Delina and Marion would bring the 2 guinea pigs to feed it. A swimming pool was enough for it to swim in, and recently, It became Dieteeth's new little follower. Since Dieteeth couldn't be found, it must have stayed with Whitehair. After playing with Chirps for a while, Jianghai also returned to the villa. After returning to the villa, he thought that since the income of his manor was so good, should he increase the wages of his cowboys and sailors? Although he already gave a lot of bonuses, it was still necessary to have a clear reward and punishment system. Anyway, he had nothing to do today, so he began to think about it at home. In the evening, after dinner, Edward Anderson and Robbins Garcia came together. Because the cowboys and fishermen still had things to do, the two of them came to represent them. After arriving at Jianghai's villa, Jianghai also told them his thoughts. It has been nearly 2 years since I came to Winthrop. I am very grateful for the help of the two of you. This time, I am going to set a new salary and bonus for our cowboys and fishermen. I can't just casually pay them according to my mood. Looking at the two in front of him, Jianghai smiled and said to them. When they heard Jianghai talking about salary and bonus, the two's eyes lit up instantly. If this happened in Huaxia, there might be some people who would hypocritically decline and say that there was no need. But this was the United States and everyone liked money. It's just that Americans exposed this character more. As soon as they heard that Jianghai wanted to increase their wages, their ears perked up. Looking at their expressions, Jianghai also chuckled. I did some calculations today. I don't care how big the wage gap is between the fishermen and cowboys outside, but in my place, there is no gap. As for the cowboys, Robbins, your salary will be increased to $2,500 a week. Burke Dollar, Philemon Turner, Harriman Fells, and Bell Lester will all be increased to $1,500 a week. Oh right, this contract is for Bell alone. The contract for the manor guards is $2,000 a week. He can sign it together. For the newly recruited people, it will be $1,000 a week. As Jianghai spoke, he took out the new contract that he had drafted and specially called Moses Adams in the afternoon, and showed it to Robbins Garcia. As soon as he heard Jianghai's words, Robbins Garcia's eyes lit up. With a weekly salary of $2,500, there were 52 weeks in a year, which was $130,000. Not to mention other bonuses. Just the income alone would be $130,000 a year. F***CK. It was a battle commander among the white-collar workers. As for the others, they would earn $78,000 a year, which was no more than the average white-collar worker. As for Bell Lester's $2,000 a week, he wasn't envious. Without the diamond, there was no way to take on this job. They knew Bell's ability very well. With Bell's ability, an extra $2,000 a week wasn't a lot. It's the same for the fishermen. Edward, you will also get $2,500 a week. As for Tommy Charles, Eleanor Cece, Andrew Christian, and Marlon Rupert, they will all get $1,500 a week. However, Marlon Rupert has a separate contract with an additional $1,000. After all, he has to fly planes and helicopters, which is a benefit. The newly recruited sailors will also get $1,000 a week. After hearing Jianghai's words, Edward Anderson also nodded. According to the salary increase, they didn't get as much as the cowboys. After all, a cowboy's starting salary was $800, but now it was $1,500, which was almost double. Their starting salary was $1,200, and now it was only an increase of $300. However, an increase was the best. Moreover, for Edward Anderson, what he cared about the most wasn't the salary, but the bonus. As for the benefits, I've also written it down. I'll provide food and accommodation. 2 people will live in a small villa like the workers' quarters, and the food will be from our manor. Needless to say, the most important thing is the bonus. Whether it's a cowboy or a fisherman, you will receive 2/1000 of the total annual sales of cattle or seafood. I'll take it as a bonus, and everyone will share it equally. Looking at the people in front of him, Jianghai said very seriously. Hearing Jianghai's words, Robbins Garcia and Edward Anderson also quickly calculated in their hearts. In fact, in general, ordinary manors would give out 1% of the profits because they really didn't make much money. An ordinary manor would only earn a few $100,000 a year. 1% of the profits would be a few $1,000s, or even less than $10,000. Naturally, they could say that it was 1%. However, Jiang Hai's manner was different. A cow wasn't sold at the National Livestock Exhibition for $160,000, but at the price of $150,000 after the price increase. Jiang Hai's manor could kill nearly 20,000 cows this year. After all, the calves had grown up. 20,000 cows, $150,000 each. That was $3 billion. 1,000th was $3 million and 2,000ths was $6 million. Although it wasn't like the end of last year, when each person could get $1 million. Even if they recruited 3 new people, there were only 8 people. Each person would get a bonus of more than $700,000. Moreover, with 8 people they weren't lacking in cowboys to begin with, and they could raise more cows. What if they could kill 30,000 cows next year? When the time comes, they would be able to get 9 million, which was more than 1 million for each person. With 3 more people and 10,000 more cows, it wasn't particularly difficult. However, Jiang Hai didn't want his manor to have too many cows. As for the fishermen, Edward Anderson also thought about it. Jiang Hai was talking about all marine products, not just fish. According to the sales and prices he knew now, their annual income before tax was about $2.5 billion. Although it wasn't as good as beef, it was still a lot. 2,000ths was $5 million. Now they had 5 people. If they recruited 4 more, that would be 9 people. Each person could get more than $500,000. Coupled with their original salary, it was quite a lot. Most importantly, they were different from Robbins Garcia and the other cowboys. In their fish farms, there were plenty of fish that could be raised. Jiang Hai's fish farm was far from being saturated. Moreover, Jiang Hai could increase the size of his fish farm. Thinking of this, Robbins Garcia and Edward Anderson's eyes suddenly lit up. Just like what was said just now, no one would complain about money. Although it seemed that they could earn a lot now, they could still earn more. Boss, there is no problem with this contract. But I remember you said at the beef cattle show that you wanted to expand the area of the pasture, right? After thinking for a while, Robbins Garcia couldn't sit still and looked at Jiang Hai with a smile. Boss, there is no problem with this contract. But I remember that you said at the beef cattle show that you wanted to expand the pasture area, right? Well, that's what I thought too. Boss, now that we have 9 fishermen, the area we can manage has also increased. Do you think we should apply to the state government to include the open sea outside our fish farm? Hearing that Robbins Garcia had already spoken, Edward Anderson on the other side immediately followed. Chapter 719. This can be. Listening to their words, Jiang Hai touched his chin and muttered in a low voice. At the same time, his eyes lit up. When he was in Texas, Jiang Hai had considered the idea of buying some manors. Back then, he didn't do it to raise cattle, but to sell grass. Don't forget, Jiang Hai could sell grass for $1 billion to $800 million a year. And that was in dollars. But after he came back, he had been busy, so he temporarily forgot about it. Now that Robbins Garcia mentioned it, Jiang Hai was a little tempted. Right now, he has more than $1 billion in cash in his hands. Even if he keeps this money in the bank, he will only earn some interest. Therefore, Jiang Hai doesn't care if he wants to buy more land, whether it's pastures or fisheries. But after all, Boston was not like Texas or Montana, where the population was sparse. There were a lot of people here, and there was no vacant land. If Jiang Hai wanted to expand, he would have to take over the land of other manors. And most importantly, with the development of tourism in Winthrop, and Jiang Hai's interest in the beef of his manors, the land was steadily increasing. The price of land here was still rising steadily, and the meat sold by these people would be more expensive than before. Whether they would sell it or not, and what the price would be, this still needs to be considered. Jiang Hai was going to talk to Mayor Wallace tomorrow, and ask him to help him ask how much money he would need to buy all the small and medium-sized manors nearby. If he could raise cattle, he would raise cattle. If he couldn't raise cattle, planting grass would be a pretty good income. After talking to Robbins Garcia and Edward Anderson for a while, The three of them also decided on what to do tomorrow. He pulled the two of them away and went to work. Not long after, Belle Lester and Tommy Charles left the manor in their respective cars. One of them went to Old Tony's Cowboy Song Bar, while the other went to see Warrior. When they told Jiang Hai that he was going to recruit people, the two places were in an uproar. According to Jiang Hai, they would go to see Warrior to recruit people at around 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, mainly because they had to go out to sea to fish at night, so they could see how good these people were. They would only recruit people at Cowboy Song Bar around 8 o'clock in the evening. After the time and benefits were posted, almost all of Winthrop was shocked. $8,000 a week meant $52,000 a year, which was a pretty high annual salary for a cowboy. But considering that there would be a year-end bonus, according to Belle Lester, each person would receive at least a few $100,000 as a bonus. This was the biggest. A few $100,000 was a huge amount of money in the United States. In addition to paying taxes, a few $100,000 could even buy a farm, and a large one at that. So in Winthrop, no, even in all of Boston, the news spread overnight, and many cowboys flocked to Winthrop. The fishermen, on the other hand, were a bit calmer, because fishermen earned more than $50,000 a year. They could earn a lot in other places, so they didn't care about Jiang Hai's $1,000 a week. But everyone in Winthrop knew that Jiang Hai's bonus was extremely enviable. Most importantly, Jiang Hai had made it very clear. This was only the salary during the probation period. When it was raised to $1,500 a week, they would earn more than the average sailor. And most importantly, Jiang Hai wasn't a long-distance fishing boat. They didn't have to go out to sea for weeks or even months. They could go back to sleep every day and get such a salary, which was still very tempting. So when Jiang Hai finished his work and slept with Chi Jia and Chia, leaning on Aphrodite and Dana, Winthrop was about to be wiped open. After a night of silence, the next morning, Jiang Hai still got up according to his usual biological clock. After breakfast, he took little Huang and Xiaobai to feed little Xia, took a walk around, and then returned to his villa to rest. But today, when he was on his way back, he was stopped by Dulles Gerard, and O'Connor Murphy came along with him. "What's the matter? What's wrong with the winery?" Looking at the old man who ran over anxiously in front of him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but ask with some doubts. He glanced at Aphrodite and the others who were still working in the winery in the distance, and they were obviously at a loss. "No, the winery is very good, it's wine." After taking a few deep breaths, Dulles Gerard looked at Jiang Hai and said seriously, "Oh, what's the problem? Speak slowly." Looking at Dulles Gerard, Jiang Hai also smiled and said to him, Ever since Dulles Gerard came to Jiang Hai's manor, the old man became happier and happier. He was able to make a lot of money in Jiang Hai's manor. In addition, the air was good, the quality of life was good, the food and drinks were good, which made Dulles Gerard's body much better than before. Originally, he came to Jiang Hai's manor because he didn't have anything to do at home. Secondly, it was also because of the Clive sisters. But at this time, he really liked this place. When he first came, his attitude was still very arrogant. In his opinion, beef, cattle, fish, what kind of money could they make? Wine was the most profitable existence. But when Jiang Hai started selling cattle last year, he was dumbfounded. More than 10,000 cattle were sold for more than $1 billion. He had never heard of such a way of selling cattle in his life, let alone seen it in his life. At that time, he was a little anxious. Originally, he came with the identity of a savior, counting on Jiang Hai's beef and fish to sell for a lot of money, relying on the wine to make a fortune. But when he found out that beef was so valuable, he couldn't sit still. Fortunately, there was a group of fishermen last year, but the situation this year was not the same. The fishermen turned over the surfs and sang. The market in Huaxia had not been opened yet, but the market in the United States alone was $2.5 billion in revenue a year. This was even more than last year's beef cattle. So how could they sit still? So these days, Dulles Gerard had been very worried, but it was useless to worry. Wine really needed a certain cellar time. For wine, the best quality was the wine that had been cellared for 3 years, and the best drinking time was 5 years. If it was more than 10 years old, there was basically no way to drink it. On TV, there were always some 82 Lafite, 90 Romanée-Conti, and so on. But in fact, the production of these wines was very small. Jiang Hai didn't know how to make wine before, so he didn't know. Now that he had made wine, he knew a little. When making wine, the method of making wine would be chosen. For more than 95% of wine, the best time to drink it was between 3 to 5 years. For wine that was more than 5 years old, it was also possible to make wine that was more than 10 years old. However, for wine that was more than 10 years old, it had to be made using the method that was more than 10 years old. This method of making wine couldn't be drunk within 10 years, and only wine that was more than 10 years old could be drunk. And this kind of wine must be made by a super winery that was sure that it could be sold after 10 years. Now there were some brands in the market, such as Bordeaux Noble Wine Burgundy, First Class Vineyard, Hermitage, Chateau Royal, Barolo Barbaresco, Amarone, Sherry Rioja, Riviera Duero, Porter Napa Valley Top Barossa Ice Wine, and so on. In fact, there were very few wines. Dulles Gerard didn't know if Jiang Hai had been in this winery for more than 10 years. So when he made wine for Jiang Hai, he made it according to the normal standards. Normally, wine could be drunk after half a year, but it would be sold after a year, and it would be sold after 3 years. As an old winemaker, Dulles Gerard naturally understood this. Therefore, he didn't plan to sell it this year, but planned to do it next year. But he was forced to do it by the beef and fish. A few days ago, when he went to the cellar, he opened a bottle and tasted it. It had been 7 months since the wine was brewed. As a result, the old man was shocked when he took a sip of the wine. How could the taste be so good? The taste of the red wine constantly stimulated the taste buds. The smell was spicy, but it was very young. The taste was quite complex with the taste of licorice. The aftertaste lasted for a long time, and the acidity was still very fresh. There was a slight astringency, but it gave people a sense of continuous elegance. It was as if a fresh, refined, 16-year-old beauty, wearing a princess dress appeared in front of him at a medieval noble ball. At first glance he was deeply attracted, and this girl, who was the focus of the audience, even took the initiative to walk in front of him and invite him to dance for the first time. Feeling the girl's body fragrance and gently caressing her waist, Dulles Gerard was intoxicated by her shyness and the attention of the audience. He stood like this in the cellar for more than an hour, until O'Connor Murphy found him and woke him up. Of course, the reason why he felt this way was because he was old and sad. Secondly, it was because he had tasted too much wine, and his sense of taste was far more developed than that of ordinary people. If you asked Jiang Hai to say these words, he probably wouldn't understand. But in old Dulles Gerard's mind, these words suddenly jumped out. He had brewed wine all his life, and he had drunk all kinds of wine. If an ordinary person drank this wine, at most, they would feel that the wine was quite fresh, delicious, and had a great taste. They would not have such hallucinations. After tasting this wine, Dulles Gerard named it the taste of first love. Later, he wanted to find Jiang Hai and ask if he could participate in the competition, but he didn't catch him until today. So the wine is brewed. After listening to Dulles Gerard in front of him, Jiang Hai said with some surprise, "Well, this wine is definitely the best wine I have ever tasted. Even Romanée-Conti can't be compared to it. Except for the top Romanée-Conti of 1996, I can guarantee that within 3 years, no, within 5 years, our wine will be the best. Even if it is more than 10 years old, it will still be able to compete. If it is released for another year, I dare to even ask for the best wine in the world." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, old Dulles Gerard was still quite confident. He straightened his chest and said with a serious face. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai was a little tempted. He actually didn't like to drink wine. He only liked to drink beer among all alcoholic beverages. He brewed red wine because there was a vineyard here, and there was nothing to do. Secondly, he also wanted to make money. Now that Dulles Gerard told him that these wines could already make money, Jiang Hai was a little tempted. "How do we do it? Do you need me to go to Prawalton?" Listening to Dulles Gerard's words, Jiang Hai said to him, "Originally, Jiang Hai didn't care about releasing the wine for another year. But this year's new wine can be used to make a name for himself. There's no need for that. We don't have much wine in total. It's a pity to sell it in Sam's Club. We can participate in the wine competition. When the time comes, we can make a name for ourselves and sell it in limited quantities. I want to keep at least half of last year's wine and sell it in 3 years. I believe that by that time, these wines will become the overlords of the wine industry. Looking at Jiang Hai, Dulles Gerard's old eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. It can be seen that he is quite confident in this wine. Okay, then I'll leave it to you. Do you have any plans? Looking at Dulles Gerard, Jiang Hai made a decision. He is definitely willing to support making money, and he doesn't want to trouble Prawalton for everything. It doesn't matter to trouble Prawalton, but don't forget, there is still Walmart behind Prawalton. It's not a good idea to put all the work on others. Since Dulles Gerard can help Jiang Hai solve the problem of sales, Jiang Hai naturally will not disagree. At the end of this month, the Magoon wine competition will be held for 3 days. We can participate in it. Looking at Jiang Hai, Dulles Gerard said seriously. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also calculated in his mind. At the end of the month, there is no problem. Okay, you and O'Connor Murphy go first. All the standards will be the best. We are not short of money. I will rush over before the competition starts. Looking at Dulles Gerard, Jiang Hai thought for a moment and said seriously. He felt that he had been going to exhibitions this year. But it doesn't matter. Anyway, he hasn't been to Europe. This time, he will just treat it as having fun. Chapter 720. After making the arrangements with Dulles Gerard, Jiang Hai returned to the villa and rested for a while. After lunch, he left home and went to the town. The reason why he did not go with Edouard Anderson and Robbins Garcia was that he had to rush to 3 different places. And the places they were originally going to were different. He could find them when it was time. Jiang Hai drove his self-driving car to the town of Winthrop. Winthrop was still quite influential in China, especially in the circle of the capital. Although it was not a very fashionable place, it was a small rural town in the United States. If you wanted history, you could eat food. If you wanted to go to the sea, you could go to the sea. You could also participate in the cultural and shopping activities here. Winthrop indeed attracted a large number of tourists. Very few people came in the winter, but after spring came, there were a lot of people. Some people who were not short of money directly regarded the town as their second home. They rented a house in the town for a long time. It was not expensive. It was about 2,400 yuan a month. About $400 a month could rent a 2-story villa facing the sea, with flowers blooming in spring and a lawn. Of course, it was really small. It was less than 200 square meters, but it was a good life. At least the people here liked it. There were many rich people in China now. Some old people and young people liked to come here. The food here was good, and the prices were much cheaper than in China. The living conditions were good, and the air was almost free of pollution. Under such circumstances, the only problem was the language barrier, which also limited more people to come and stay for a long time. As for staying here for a long time, it was necessary to change the tourist visa. Speaking of which, there were many kinds of tourist visas. If one stayed for a long time, one could apply for a B2 tourist visa. The duration of this visa was divided into 3 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and a permanent visa. Of course, it was unlikely to apply for a permanent visa, but 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years could still be applied. For example, if one wanted to see a doctor, or if one's daughter or son got married and was about to have a baby, the elderly could come and help take care of it. But generally speaking, it was easy to apply for 3 months and 1 year visas. The other ones were a little troublesome to review. When Jiang Hai drove over, he could see that there were many Huaxia people in the town at this time. They were taking photos, chatting, or on their way to restaurants, horse ranches, and the beach. It was very lively. Because there were a lot of people, Jiang Hai's car wasn't very fast. His car wasn't as eye-catching as his shield. Thinking about it, Jiang Hai's car didn't usually come here many times. so no one really recognized it. He drove slowly all the way to the town hall. Jiang Hai also parked his car here, then walked in. But as soon as he walked in, he saw SH-20 Clive coming out from inside. When she saw Jiang Hai, her face showed a trace of surprise, then some surprise, but then there was no trace of anger. "What are you doing here?" Listening to her stiff words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be a little confused. How did he offend her? I'm looking for Mayor Wallace to talk about the expansion of the surrounding ranches and fisheries. If it was an ordinary love master, he would say that he was looking for her at this time. But unfortunately, Jiang Hai was not. So although he was a little confused, he still told her the truth. When she heard Jiang Hai's words, SH-20 Clive couldn't help but be stunned. "The mayor is in the mayor's office. You can go in and find him." After that, SH-20 Clive was about to go out. But fortunately, Jiang Hai was not stupid. He grabbed her hand at the critical moment, and then looked at her with some confusion. Even if there is no such relationship between us, we should be considered friends. If I did something wrong, you can tell me. I don't like to be so mysterious." Looking at SH-20 Clive, Jiang Hai said with some doubts. He thought about it carefully. He really didn't know how he offended this girl. "It's so strange. You didn't offend me, let go." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, SH-20 Clive rolled her eyes at Jiang Hai and said in a deep voice, "I won't let go unless you tell me what I did wrong." Looking at SH-20 Clive, Jiang Hai also showed a childish temper, and said with a serious face, If you don't let go, I'm going to call security." Hearing Jiang Hai's shameless words, SH-20 Clive couldn't help but glare at him and say loudly. Hearing her words, a lot of people looked over, including a lot of security. But when these people found out that the conflict was between Jiang Hai and SH-20 Clive, they all shrank back. First of all, this happened to Jiang Hai. Just like what Jiang Hai said when he turned against them, Jiang Hai was their god of wealth, their savior. How could they dare to interfere with Jiang Hai's business? Second of all, because they knew some of the stories between Jiang Hai and SH-20 Clive. What did other people's business have to do with them? Seeing that these people saw her situation, but none of them reached out to help, SH-20 Clive stared at Jiang Hai with hatred. "Haha, have you eaten yet?" Seeing that these people ignored him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile, and then said to SH-20 Clive, "I've eaten." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, SH-20 Clive still stared at him and said, "Then, I'll treat you to coffee." After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai said to SH-20 Clive. This time, he didn't give her a chance to refuse. He directly pulled her out of the town hall, went to the coffee shop across the street, and then stuffed her into a private room. After SH-20 Clive arrived, although she still looked angry, she didn't make a scene. "Cappuccino, I remember you like this. Now you can tell me what I did wrong. I have a slow reaction. If you don't tell me, I'll never know." After waiting for a cup of coffee and a drink, Jiang Hai pushed the coffee in front of SH-20 Clive and asked her carefully. Hearing Jiang Hai's words and seeing his actions, SH-20 Clive glared at him and picked up the coffee. To be honest, when SH-20 Clive faced Jiang Hai, she really didn't know what to think of him. At the very beginning, SH-20 Clive was the most likely person to become the mistress of Jiang Hai's manor. She also thought so and did so. Even after having Delina and Marion, they didn't stop her from dating Jiang Hai. However, after that accident, she found out that Jiang Hai had a wife in Huaxia. According to Jiang Hai, it was only a contract marriage, not love, and he was ready to divorce her. However, perhaps because of the little princess in her heart, she decided to stay away from Jiang Hai before Jiang Hai divorced her. However, because of this decision, she became further and further away from Jiang Hai. In her eyes, Jiang Hai was a very likable man. On one hand, he was rich. On the other hand, he had a good heart and was very responsible. He didn't have a strange temper and was very easy to get along with. Although sometimes he was a little childish and didn't have much social experience, these didn't prevent him from being a good husband or boyfriend. Back then, it was impossible for SH-20 Clive not to be moved by Jiang Hai. Otherwise, she wouldn't have left Jiang Hai's house so late at night. However, her decision did push Jiang Hai away. It turned out that Jiang Hai was used to being passive. When she took the initiative to leave his world, he would not make a move to persuade her to stay. Instead, he would silently stand in place. If you went back to him, then he would accept you. If you did not go back to him, then you should keep your distance. Sh20 Clive once thought of going back to Jiang Hai. However, when she went back again, she found that Jiang Hai's side, which used to be empty, was occupied by others. She couldn't even be with Jiang Hai because of Qi, let alone so many people. So from that moment on, she felt that it might be good to just be friends with Jiang Hai. But people were like this. When there was a person in her heart, she would always subconsciously compare him with this person when there was another person by her side. However, it could be said that there was only one Jiang Hai in the world. Other people weren't called Jiang Hai. Therefore, she really didn't know when the knot between Sh20 Clive and Jiang Hai could be untied. You really don't know why I'm angry? Sh20 Clive looked at Jiang Hai and calmed down. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai shook his head. He really didn't know. Let me remind you about karma. Seeing that Jiang Hai didn't seem to be playing dumb, Sh20 Clive said a name. Karma? Your sister? I met her a few days ago. And then she wanted to see the underground race car. So I took her to see it. But in the end, we didn't see it. I sent her back very early and watched her walk into the dormitory building with my own eyes. Is there a problem? As soon as Karma Cliff's name was mentioned, Jiang Hai remembered, but after checking, he didn't find anything wrong. You still have the nerve to say that the underground race car is a place where a girl like her should go? How dangerous is it? Hearing Jiang Hai admit this matter, Sh20 Clive couldn't help but say loudly, you're right, that's not a place where good people go. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai subconsciously wanted to refute, but after thinking about it in his mind, he realized that it was indeed not a good place. You're really a rascal. You admit your mistake very quickly. Sh20 Clive didn't think that Jiang Hai would admit his mistake so easily. Originally, she thought that Jiang Hai would quibble, but she didn't expect him to admit it directly, which really caught her off guard. That place is really not a place where good people go. I know this. There is no need to have a conflict with you. If you don't say it, I won't take her there in the future. Of course, if I see her going, I will stop her. After all, we are friends. Smiling and taking a sip of the drink in front of him, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Looking at Jiang Hai's smiling face, Sh20 Clive was really angry and funny. You bastard, you really are a bastard. The more she looked at Jiang Hai's smiling face, the more uneasy Sh20 Clive's heart became. After looking at him hatefully, she stood up with her bag and walked out quickly. Hey, what's wrong? Seeing that Sh20 Clive was angry again, Jiang Hai said with some helplessness. It's nothing this time. You delayed me from going out to work. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Sh20 Clive, who was walking to the door, stopped for a moment, bit her lip, and after saying this, she pushed the door open and walked out. After watching her figure get into a blue Ford car, Jiang Hai smiled. In fact, even if he was dull when it came to relationships, he knew that Sh20 Clive was still interested in him. But just like what Sh20 Clive thought, Jiang Hai also knew that she was not the kind of person to share with others. However, Jiang Hai had unknowingly gathered so many people around him, asking him to leave these people and go find Sh20 Clive. Jiang Hai knew that he couldn't do this, so he could only wait and see if Sh20 Clive would come back by herself. But judging from the current situation, there was still a line between him and her. But this line was not enough to make her come back. It was that simple. After drinking the drink and paying the money, Jiang Hai set off again and went to the mayor's office. When he entered, he saw Mayor Wallace talking on the phone. Seeing Jiang Hai come in, he gestured to Jiang Hai to wait, then pointed to the sofa opposite him. Jiang Hai sat down first. Seeing a book on Mayor Wallace's desk, Jiang Hai casually picked it up. Originally, he just wanted to casually flip through it, but as soon as he opened the book, Jiang Hai was attracted by what was written inside. You're about to turn Winthrop upside down. Why do you have time to come here? Tell me, why are you here? Just as Jiang Hai was reading the book, Mayor Wallace suddenly asked him with a smile. Where did you buy this book? Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai also raised his head and looked at Mayor Wallace in front of him. Jiang Hai asked somewhat anxiously. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace glanced at the book in his hand. Is there a problem? Chapter 721. This is a book? Every bookstore sells it. Mayor Wallace said with some doubts as he took the book from Jiang Hai's hand. This book is actually a very ordinary esoteric book, titled The Secret of Nazi Madness. In fact, it is about some esoteric actions in Germany during World War II. Among them, there are two most famous ones. One is the Aryan underground city. It is said that after World War II, some Germans fled to this place. They built Aryan City under the ice of the Antarctic continent, where the elites of the Germanic race lived. After World War II, the United States once sent a fleet to search for these people. They carried out the airborne plan, but this plan was eventually forced to stop. Legend has it that it was because they encountered the elites of Germany. However, no one knows whether this is true or not. But this Aryan underground city has always been the focus of discussion on TV and the internet. The other story is about the Tibetan area of Huaxia. Because some things are not allowed to be written, it can only be briefly introduced. According to legend, in the Tibetan area of Huaxia, there is a cave called Shambhala Cave. This cave is the axis of the world. There is endless energy hidden in it. Of course, Jiang Hai does not know what kind of energy it is, but he knows that if there is no such thing as martial arts and internal force in this world, then what is said in the book is naturally false. But what Jiang Hai noticed most is that whether it is Aryan City or the virtual Shambhala Cave, there is a badge, a dragon-shaped badge, the same as the one he saw in the cave of the ancestral dragon. What the hell is this? Looking at the book in front of him, Jiang Hai's heart is not calm. In fact, Jiang Hai does not care too much about his current wealth. Although it is important, the most important thing is his golden finger and his life. Looking at the two badges in the picture, Jiang Hai frowned deeply. What? You want to see it? If you want to see it, take it away. This thing is not worth much. Seeing that Jiang Hai was still thinking, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but smile. Then he shrugged and said to him. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai did not refuse. Although he can buy another book, he really wants to read it now. Of course, he still remembers his purpose here. By the way, Uncle Wallace, I did come back to discuss something with you. Looking at Mayor Wallace, Jiang Hai put away the book and said to him. Hearing that Jiang Hai really has something to say, he can't help but look at him seriously. I'm going to expand my manor. Whether it's the pastures or the fish farm, I'm going to expand everything. Looking at Mayor Wallace, Jiang Hai also explained his purpose here. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace also fell into deep thought. It doesn't matter if you want to expand this. The area near the sea to Cod Bay is under the jurisdiction of Winthrop. And because you also know that the fishermen here don't have the habit of raising fish, it's all ownerless land. You can buy it, but the price may be slightly more expensive than when you came. After all, the town has been developed. I can sell it to you, but the land. Speaking of this, Mayor Wallace shook his head. There is no way to make the decision there. Winthrop has less land and more people. After all, it is still within the boundaries of the Boston region. Although it is not as prosperous as the city, there is no ownerless land. Basically, all the land has been opened for horse ranches and farms. Mayor Wallace can't make a decision about these ownerless land. I know. I'll buy as much as the ocean is big. As for the land, I'll have to trouble you, Uncle Mayor. Can you help me ask if they have any intention of selling? If they do, I'll definitely give them a reasonable price, since they're all from the same village. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai also smiled and said. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace also nodded. Since Jiang Hai has decided to expand, it is also a good thing for him. When the time comes, he will have to pay more taxes. After talking with Mayor Wallace for a while, Jiang Hai got up and left. However, he did not return to the manor. Instead, he went to his car and read the two books he brought back. He carefully looked at the things in the books, because he always had a faint feeling that the badge was exactly the same as the one in the cave of the Zulong. If it was really the same, then he might have to find a way to find this cave in Aryan City, although he himself felt that it was somewhat unreliable. According to the book, the earliest history of Aryan City was in December 1946. At that time, World War II had just ended, and the United States had become the new leader of the world. At that time, the Americans had always suspected that the German chancellor was really dead. After all, they could not be 100% sure that the body they obtained was that person. Therefore, they launched a global search. Finally, in 1946, they found something wrong in Antarctica. In December, the Secretary of the United States Navy, James Forrest, sent a large fleet of 40 ships and aircraft to Antarctica. The fleet included the Navy's flagship, the Mount Olympus, the aircraft carrier, the Philippine Mercenary, maritime aircraft carriers, submarines, destroyers, icebreakers, tankers, transport ships, and so on. This special force was composed of more than 1,400 sailors and crew members. The ship also carried 3 dog sledding teams that specialized in traveling in the ice and snow. The United States Navy took documentary videos of this expedition, and later, it was even made into a movie called Secret Land. The ground team equipped with tractors, explosives, and various tools was responsible for building an airborne base in Antarctica called Little America. It was a small airstrip in the ice and snow that could allow 6 R-4D aircraft and 2 seaplanes to land smoothly. After the base was built, they took advantage of the 3-month summer in Antarctica to conduct a survey. Although they found many strange phenomena, they did not find anything more. They only found warm lakes connected to seawater, and a plane accident that caused 3 deaths and 6 injuries. Other than that, they did not find anything else. This kind of book was like this. Everything written was vague. It seemed to be very attractive. When Jiang Hai was a child, he liked to watch this kind of exploration program. But when he grew up, he found that these programs were really stupid. This book was the same. Jiang Hai half reclined on the chair and read for several hours, almost finishing the main part of the book. But in fact, nothing was written in the book. No one knew what happened in Antarctica, and no one knew about the caves in Tibet. Unknowingly, the phone rang, which pulled Jiang Hai out of the world of the book. Gently massaging his temples, Jiang Hai opened his eyes and glanced at the caller. It was none other than Edward Anderson. He then looked at the sky outside. Unknowingly, the sky had gradually darkened. It was already past 4 o'clock in the afternoon, almost 5 o'clock. It seemed that it was the appointed time. Jiang Hai secretly called Mother Dai, then picked up the phone. Sure enough, Edward Anderson was asking if Jiang Hai had arrived. They were already there. I'll be there soon. After informing Edward Anderson, Jiang Hai also started the car and drove to the Sea Warriors. The car quickly arrived at the parking lot of the Sea Warriors. After parking the car, Jiang Hai quickly walked in. As soon as he entered, he saw that the scene was really lively. At this time, there were many people gathered in the Sea Warriors. These people all looked very rough, drinking beer and white wine there, and their relationship was quite harmonious. Edward Anderson's figure was also very conspicuous among these people. Jiang Hai saw him at a glance. At this time, he was obviously the focus of everyone. In fact, the reason why these people gathered here today was entirely because of him. After all, the welfare of Jiang Hai's manor was something that everyone wanted to go to, even though the salary was not very high. Hi, boss. When Jiang Hai squeezed over there, Edward Anderson also saw Jiang Hai and couldn't help but raise his hand and call out. As soon as the word boss came out, almost everyone's eyes looked at Jiang Hai in an instant. After all, the purpose of these people here was to be one of Jiang Hai's subordinates. Looking at these people who wanted to eat him alive, Jiang Hai smiled awkwardly, and then walked to Edward Anderson's side. Come, let me introduce you. This is Al Mond, the best sailor before me, our marine hero. Haha, he is also the owner of this cowboy song Al. This is Jiang Hai, my boss. Seeing Jiang Hai squeeze over, Edward Anderson pulled him and introduced an old white man. This old white man was almost 60 years old, his hair and beard were white, and he had a big belly. Although he was a sailor and a marine, Jiang Hai felt that he was more like a businessman. Indeed, this man was indeed a businessman. Almond. When Jiang Hai came here before, Edward Anderson introduced him to him once. He had participated in World War II and was a major in the Navy. He was the captain of a destroyer. The bar they were in now was modified from the destroyer. Before joining the army, he was also a sailor, but later he went into business. And judging from his current situation, he was very good at business. Unlike Jiang Hai, who relied on his golden fingers to make a fortune in a short time, he worked hard to build a business. After introducing themselves to each other, Jiang Hai also shook hands with him. It could be said that they had gotten to know each other. However, whether it was Edward Anderson or Jiang Hai, in fact, they had nothing to do with Almond. He came here just to get to know Jiang Hai, so after a few words of greeting he left. Jiang Hai and Edward Anderson officially entered today's selection. Of course, Edward Anderson already knew who to choose. After all, they all made a living near Winthrop. There was no need to say much about their standards. Although many people wanted to enter Jiang Hai's manor, in Edward Anderson's opinion, they only wanted the elites. But some things, if you don't ask, how do you know if you have a chance? So not long after they sat down, many people came over. In the end, a big man came over first and sat opposite Jiang Hai's table. As soon as he sat down, Jiang Hai and Edward Anderson looked at him. The big man was really tall, about 2 meters. The weather in April was still very cold, especially at night. It was basically only a few degrees, even though it was the end of April. But he only wore a short-sleeved t-shirt inside and a denim jacket outside. His explosive muscles were swaying in front of Jiang Hai. It could be seen that this man's complexion was good, and he was very tall and sturdy. He was a good man. "Hey, Edward, I heard that you are recruiting sailors. What do you think of me?" After the big man sat down, he asked Edward Anderson. But when he asked, his eyes were somewhat nervous. Although he was very confident in his skills, he was still afraid that Edward Anderson would look down on him. After Edward Anderson glanced at him, he smiled. "I knew it, Bill. You will definitely come. Welcome." After smiling, Edward Anderson directly stretched out his hand without saying anything. The man named Bill didn't expect to join just like that. He couldn't help but look at Jiang Hai in a daze. "Welcome." Although Jiang Hai was a little surprised that Edward Anderson agreed, he still said with a smile because he knew that Edward Anderson wouldn't cheat him. If he wanted to cheat him, he would have done it long ago. Why would he wait until now? After seeing Jiang Hai shake hands with Bill, Edward Anderson was quite gratified. In fact, he also felt that he was a little impulsive. After all, Jiang Hai was still sitting beside him. It wasn't good for him to jump over his boss. But fortunately, Jiang Hai still gave him face, which made Edward Anderson feel that he had a lot of face. But at the same time, he was also somewhat moved. "Ahem, boss, his name is Bill Zephaniah. He's one of the best cowboys around here. I wanted to hire him the last time I came to recruit him, but he went to Europe with those French people. I didn't expect him to come back now." Although Jiang Hai trusted him, Edward Anderson knew that he couldn't betray this trust. So after a little awkward smile, he told Jiang Hai, this Bill Zephaniah was just like him. He was indeed a good sailor. He could sail any kind of fishing boat. Although he didn't know how to fly a plane, he was very good at sailing a fishing boat. His machinery and operation were good at everything. Looking at his size, this guy's strength wasn't inferior to Harriman Fell's. This big guy was also a safety net on the sea. Chapter 722. Sigh, don't talk about those Europeans. Those guys are really shameless. When we boarded the ship, we agreed on a weekly salary of $950. But when we got on the ship, it became $900 a week and $50 a week. They said it was for food. I've been fishing for so many years, and this is the first time I've seen sailors being paid for food. I really wanted to jump off the ship and swim back, but fortunately, I knew I couldn't swim back, so I let it go. Bill Zephaniah said helplessly when he heard Edward Anderson talk about his experiences in Europe. This is the contract for our manor. You can take a look. Jiang Hai smiled when he heard what he said. In fact, What he said was not only to accuse the Europeans of being unfair, but also to show his loyalty to him. What he meant was that as long as he signed the contract, no matter what, he would fulfill what was written on the contract. Jiang Hai was quite reassured by such a crew member. Of course, if his personality wasn't too good, then Jiang Hai wouldn't have any psychological burden to fire him. This share. After receiving Jiang Hai's contract, the man named Bill Zephaniah looked at it and said with some hesitation, "To be honest, $1,000 a week for the first 3 months of the contract was extremely high even in the United States. Moreover, he was very satisfied to be able to work in front of his own house. He was even a little surprised. However, he was somewhat surprised by the cut, because compared to other fishing boats, he felt that 1% was a little too little. However, Jiang Hai directly gave him 2%, which was 5 times less than the fishing boat with the lowest share. This made him a little puzzled. Logically speaking, he had heard of Jiang Hai before. Everyone in town said that he was a generous person who liked to give benefits to his employees. Why did he only get such a small share in the end? This made him a little confused. Our boss's fish are not caught in the open sea or the high seas, but the fish we buy ourselves. Therefore, the fish we catch are actually only from the fish farm. Of course, sometimes we have to go to the high seas to catch fish. Moreover, the price of our fish is somewhat beyond your imagination." Edward Anderson looked at Bill Zephaniah, who was a little confused in front of him, and said with a chuckle, What do you mean?" Bill was still a little confused when he heard Edward Anderson's words, and he asked with some confusion. Edward Anderson heard his words and couldn't help but smile. "It means what it means. The only thing I can guarantee is that 2% is much more than 10% of other fishing boats." Bill Zephaniah nodded, then signed his name directly after hearing Edward Anderson's words. "You've made a good choice." Seeing him sign his name, Edward Anderson also smiled. Although working here with Jiang Hai was tiring, at least he could go home and sleep every day. He was also close to land, and he could eat whatever he wanted without any danger. In fact, Bill Zephaniah would have agreed to come over with just this, and a weekly salary of $1,000. After he signed the contract, Jiang Hai told him that he would go out to sea with the ship tonight to see how his situation was. If it was okay, then he could go back tomorrow to get his things and move in. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bill Zephaniah naturally didn't have any other questions, and happily sat down next to him. Seeing that one person succeeded, the second person went over. But soon, this person stood up and left helplessly, because he didn't join. According to Edward Anderson, this guy was a drunkard. Although he had a good relationship with them, this guy especially liked to drink and cause trouble. Jiang Hai's manner couldn't tolerate him. One succeeded, one failed, but no matter what, there were 2 people. This gave everyone a glimmer of hope. Later, more and more people came to ask Jiang Hai if he wanted them. About 3 hours later, there were 4 people standing next to Jiang Hai and Edward Anderson. These 4 people were Bill Zephaniah, who had been introduced earlier, Bennett Rodney, Bauer Rahman, and Carlisle Cotton. Among the 3, Bennett Rodney was a black man whose ancestral home was Congo. In fact, he was related to an NBA star Mutombo. According to him, he should be a distant cousin. Of course, this relationship was very long, but his physique was about the same as Uncle Mutombo's, which was really scary. He was more than 2 meters tall and had terrifying muscles. Although he was almost 50 years old this year, his physical fitness was quite good. Even Edward Anderson couldn't help but nod at him. This kind of old pal was the person he liked the most. He also knew this person, who was famous in the industry for being a good person. He was clean and had good abilities. He wasn't originally in Winthrop, although his home was here. Usually, he lived in New York and worked in a fish farm in New York. This time, when Jiang Hai was recruiting people, his family specially called him to come back. Naturally, he was successfully selected. The third person was called Bauer Rahman. He was a Norwegian Caucasian and was about 1.8 meters tall. He was much shorter than the rest of the group. It could be said that among the 6 people, including Jiang Hai, he was the shortest, but he had a natural aura of the ocean. The fourth person was called Carlisle Cotton. He was also a black man about 1.9 meters tall with huge muscles, but his personality was a little shy. However, Edward Anderson knew his standard very well. After recruiting these 4 people, Jiang Hai and the rest left. Jiang Hai still had to go to Cowboy Song, and Edward Anderson wanted to take them to the Manor's Wharf first. There, they were going to go out to sea tonight to see the standard of these people. Of course, Jiang Hai was also going. However, they had arranged to meet at 10 o'clock, and Jiang Hai was almost done at 10 o'clock. After parting with them, Jiang Hai drove directly to Cowboy Song. When he arrived, he found that Robbins Garcia was already there. The cowboys were much more enthusiastic than the fishermen. It should be known that a cowboy's annual income was only $20,000 to $30,000. Now, Jiang Hai's base salary, not including the share, was more than $50,000, which was enough to make these cowboys go crazy. As soon as Robbins Garcia came over, they enthusiastically introduced themselves. They even took the initiative to establish a relationship with him. As for these people, Robbins Garcia gave them an X in his heart. What a joke! The United States was the most unfriendly country, especially here in Jiang Hai's country. If the people he recruited did not meet Jiang Hai's expectations, he did not want to lose $1 million job for a person who wanted to be friends with him. If it was his parents or brothers, it would be different. But these so-called friends were not enough for him to do that. Therefore, before Jiang Hai came, he just smiled and went along with him. However, when Jiang Hai came in, these people wanted to swallow Jiang Hai whole. Whether they knew him or not, they all smiled and came over to greet Jiang Hai, hoping that Jiang Hai would take a fancy to them. However, Jiang Hai just smiled at them, and his powerful strength directly pushed the crowd aside and came to Robbins Garcia's side. How is it? Looking at Robbins Garcia, Jiang Hai said to him casually. As for old Tony's gesture to ask Jiang Hai if he wanted a beer, Jiang Hai also refused. After all, he was still driving. Driving and not drinking is the same in any country. Basically, 3 people have been confirmed. Now it's up to you. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Robbins Garcia also said with a smile, "Call them over." The original plan was to recruit 3 more cowboys and 4 more fishermen. After looking at the fishermen, now it's time to look at the cowboys. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Robbins Garcia also waved his hand behind him, and then a man in his 30s walked over. This man is a white man about 1.8 meters tall, not as fierce as those sailors. He was wearing a shirt, a denim vest, a pair of breeches, and a pair of leather boots. There was also a leather hat on his head. To be honest, he was a little handsome, and he even had a beard. His name is Gladstone Narga. I met him when I came over yesterday. He has some history with you. Looking at the person walking over, Robbins Garcia introduced him with a smile. Oh, do we know each other? Looking at the man in front of him, Jiang Hai asked with some doubts. Although he usually doesn't want to use his brain, it doesn't mean that his brain is not good. In fact, in terms of brain capacity and the degree of brain development, he may be the highest among the people on Earth. Basically, he can say that as long as he seriously remembers people, he has a photographic memory, but he has no impression of this person. I used to work for Cartwright Company. When you made a bet with Rosalind Cartwright, I was next to you. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Gladstone Narga said with a little embarrassment. Hearing what he said, Jiang Hai was also a little embarrassed. Gladstone is the best cowboy in Cartwright Company, and a famous cowboy on our side. Hearing Jiang Hai's somewhat uncertain words, Robbins Garcia also immediately explained. He felt that Jiang Hai shouldn't be so narrow-minded. Indeed, Jiang Hai won't be so narrow-minded. After all, he only stayed in Cartwright Company, not the decision-makers of Cartwright Company. If it was Rosalind Cartwright, then Jiang Hai would definitely not leave him. But a cowboy, there is no need to make things difficult for him. And it has nothing to do with him. Don't say that. When Cartwright Company came to recruit people, the first goal was Robbins, the second goal was Burke, but they didn't go, so I had the chance to go. Hearing Robbins Garcia's words, Gladstone also said with a smile, "Cough. Since you are the chief cowboy of Cartwright Company, why don't you continue to work there? Their income there must be more than my manor, right? But although he doesn't care, Jiang Hai still asked with some doubts. There is no such thing as a chief cowboy. A cowboy is a cowboy, and the people above the cowboy are the managers. They are the people of the company, so no matter how good we are, the money we earn is still the same. I came to you for the money. Shaking his head with a smile, Gladstone said helplessly. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also nodded, so he understood. This was just like some companies. Some people were good at their jobs, while others were just here to make a living, but they knew how to flatter the boss or have some relatives. If they met some open-minded companies, those who were good at their jobs might be promoted. However, most companies calculated their salaries according to their positions. If you were good at your job or weak at your job, as long as you were in the same position, you would earn this. It seemed like Cartwright Company was the same. In fact, thinking about it, Jiang Hai's manor is also like this. In terms of pure cowboy level, regardless of management ability, skill, policy, and so on, Burke Dollar is at the same level as Robbins Garcia. He is much better than Philemon, Harriman, and Bell, but they still earn the same money. Sometimes technology is just technology, but it is not everything. Well, very good, you are hired. You can come to the manor tomorrow and try to work for 3 months. The weekly salary for 3 months is $1,000. If you do well after 3 months, you will be promoted, and then we will talk about the new salary. Hearing Gladstone's words, Jiang Hai also nodded. Since he can be compared with Robbins Garcia and Burke Dollar here, this person's level is still worth looking forward to. Okay, thank you, boss. By the way, boss, there is one thing I have to tell you. Seeing that Jiang Hai agreed and took out a contract, Gladstone Narga was also very excited. But after signing the contract, he hesitated and said to Jiang Hai, hearing that he had something to tell him, Jiang Hai was also a little strange. What is it? Before I left Carlight Company, I heard that Carlight Company had a connection with some Japanese society. It seemed that they wanted to do something against boss. I'm not very clear about the details. I just heard about it. As for the details, boss, you may have to investigate it yourself. Zhang Tai said. That's right. Boss, you may need to investigate it yourself. Chapter 723. Boss. As the voice sounded in Jiang Hai's ears, he also raised his head in confusion. When he found that the person beside him was Edward Anderson, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Then he smiled at him. Oh, what's the matter? Jiang Hai looked at Edward Anderson, who called him. We have reached the designated sea area. They are going to start casting the net. Seeing Jiang Hai react, Edward Anderson couldn't help but whisper. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai looked around and found that many people were looking at him. He couldn't help but smile. Well, let's start. With Jiang Hai's order, Tommy Charles also shouted, Cast the net. As soon as he finished speaking, the newcomer, Bill Zephaniah, slowed down the speed of the boat. Then, Bennett Rodney controlled the boom and lifted the fishing net into the sea. On the other side, Bauer Rahman and Carlisle Cotton were busy opening the fishing net and scattering it as much as possible. As the fishing net entered the sea, it instantly became a semi-arc shape blown up by the wind, catching the fish under the sea level into the net. Looking at their skillful movements, Jiang Hai continued to fall into contemplation. Today he did a lot of things. First, he learned about some badges of Nazi Germany. He must find out about this matter, but not now. He still has a lot of things to do. The second thing is about what Gladstone said to him when he recruited cowboys. In Cowboy's Song, Jiang Hai recruited a total of 3 cowboys. In addition to Gladstone Narga, there were 2 other people named Blake Hill and Eddie Lewis. They were famous cowboys around here. Robbins Garcia also knew their skills. So after confirming the candidates, they also signed the contract. After making an appointment to go to the manor tomorrow, Jiang Hai returned to the manor with Robbins Garcia. In the evening, he took Edward Anderson, Tommy Charles, Eleanor Cece, and Andrew Christian to the sea to catch fish with the 4 new sailors. It turned out that the level of these sailors was very good. Although they had just started fishing, their movements were very skillful. With 9 sailors, naturally, Jiang Hai's fishing boat would have to be increased by another one. Fortunately, he had already considered this problem. So there were still a lot of places for him to park the boat at the dock. He just had to call Dalton Green of the Ocean Temple. When the assembly was completed, he would send the boat over. This saved Jiang Hai a lot of trouble. After boarding the boat, Jiang Hai had been thinking about today's matter. He was not afraid of Cartwright Company. After all, the current Jiang Hai was not comparable to any company. If they wanted to touch him, it would not be easy. Moreover, Jiang Hai was not an easy person to deal with. But even so, Jiang Hai felt a little passive. It was not that other things were passive, but he felt that his information was too passive. His personal safety was not a big problem, but if the other party wanted to deal with him officially, it would be a little troublesome. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai raised his eyebrows. He was thinking about how to solve this problem, but it seemed that this problem was not easy to solve. The night was quiet. When the sun rose above the sea level the next day, Jiang Hai and the others had also finished catching today's fish. However, these sailors still needed to work hard. When the fishing boat returned to Jiang Hai's dock, 2 modified F-750s had been waiting there for a long time. These 2 cars were now mainly parked at the dock, and would not be parked in the parking lot. The fresh fish were divided according to the ratio, and loaded into different pickup trucks. Marin Rupert, who had rested for the night, and Tommy Charles, who had slept in the second half of the night, drove away. The 4 new sailors were also ready to go home. That night, whether it was Jiang Hai or Edward Anderson, they were quite satisfied with the skills of the 4 sailors. This was especially true for Bill Zephaniah. His sailing skills were not bad, and he was especially fast and strong when he was fishing. It seemed that Edward Anderson did not admire him for no reason. Now that everything was ready, after handing over the safety of the sailors' accommodation to Edward Anderson, Jiang Hai rode his 4-wheeled motorcycle back home. Of course, before he went back, he also went to the stable to see his Xiao Xia. Although little Xia had fully grown up, to be honest, there were not many opportunities for him to appear. After all, Jiang Hai usually rode a 4-wheeled motorcycle in the manor. Little Xia was very troublesome to ride. He had to get a saddle and a rein, and after he was done, he had to unload it. It was really troublesome, so Jiang Hai almost rarely rode this little guy. But as long as he had time, he would still take him around. After taking care of Xiao Xia, Jiang Hai directly returned to the villa. On his way back, he deliberately lightened his footsteps. This was because he knew that at this time, the people in the villa had not yet woken up. Although it was lively just now, it was actually still very early. The sun rose very early in Winthrop. Basically, in June or July, the sun rose at around 3 o'clock in the morning. But because it was only the end of April, the sun rose at around 4 o'clock. After Jiang Hai finished everything, it was not even 5:30 when he came back, so he had to lighten his footsteps. After entering the villa, Jiang Hai did not go back to his room. Instead, he took a shower in the bathroom on the first floor. In fact, he could go to the hot spring outside to take a shower, but it was quite troublesome to take a shower in the hot spring. He planned to take a shower on the first floor, and then go upstairs to sleep. Otherwise, with the fishy smell of the sea breeze, and the sweat from moving the fish in, the smell was really not very good. But just as Jiang Hai was taking a shower, he saw Azalina coming in with a yawn. After glancing at Jiang Hai in the bathroom, she did not care and directly sat on the toilet next to the bathroom. After a while, there was a sound of water splashing. Among the women in Jiang Hai's manor, except for Delina and Marian, who more or less knew to hide from Jiang Hai, the others were completely unaffected by Jiang Hai. It was said that foreigners respected privacy, but Jiang Hai did not see this at all. In Jiang Hai's villa, they were often seen walking around in the villa without underwear, only wearing thin pajamas on the outside. Sometimes, after buying new clothes, they would directly change in the living room in front of Jiang Hai and the others. Sometimes, they would suddenly run out of the room and ask what vest they wanted to wear today. At first, Jiang Hai did not know what to do, but now he was used to it. Usually, he was also very happy to take advantage of them. Sometimes, When Jiang Hai was at home, he would directly pull the girls next to him into his arms. Well, except for Delina and Marian, he would do it to satisfy his craving. If he felt it, Jiang Hai would return to his room in the beginning. But recently, he would basically find a place where there were other people and directly. For example, behind the stairs, inside the kitchen, inside the bathroom. Among the girls in Jiang Hai's villa, except for Qijia, who was more domineering, and Qiya, who was more shy, including Ai Xiaoxi, Feng Yunchen, Aphrodite, and Dana. All of them were quite wild. They did not even mind performing in public when they were aroused. Such a life. Jiang Hai could only say that it was really cool, although it was a bit shameless to say so. Have you finished examining those fishermen? Are they reliable? After the sound of running water stopped, Azalina flushed the water, glanced at Jiang Hai, took off her nightgown, walked to Jiang Hai's side, took off the showerhead, and washed her bottom. At the same time, she said to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai's hands touched the two places she had just shown, and at the same time he answered her. Not bad, very good. Feeling Jiang Hai's movements, Azalina did not resist. Instead, she deliberately took a step forward, so that Jiang Hai could feel more comfortable. Jiang Hai had long known her thoughts, but Jiang Hai had never done it with her. Although she had done it with her hands and mouth, except for that, she had never completed the last step. Then why do you seem to have some worries? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Azalina asked with some doubts. How should I put it? I do have some headaches. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also sighed. Let's talk about it. Seeing that Jiang Hai was indeed troubled, Azalina also finished showering at this time. She simply wiped her body and came out naked without putting on clothes. Jiang Hai also did not put on clothes because his clothes were full of the smell of fish. He planned to go back to his room on the second floor naked, but now he could talk to Azalina. After the two arrived at the sofa in the living room, Azalina asked Jiang Hai to sit on the sofa while she knelt in front of Jiang Hai. There was no need to say what she was going to do, because if she described it, her book would be banned. Tell me about it. After looking up at Jiang Hai, Azalina began to get busy. Jiang Hai felt her service, and also told her about his troubles. He really needed to have some forces of his own. At the very least, he would know who was trying to harm him. His current protective force was good, but the other forces were almost zero. Jiang Hai nodded his head and said, All right. He doesn't want to be a leader of the underworld or something like that, or to dominate the neighborhood. He is just an ordinary person who has a lot of wealth and makes people jealous, so he needs to learn to protect himself. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Azalina couldn't help but speed up. With Jiang Hai's soft shout, Azalina also stopped. After swallowing something, she stood up again and sat next to Jiang Hai. Then, she asked Jiang Hai to lean on her and massaged his shoulders with both hands. After hesitating for a moment, she slowly said, Brother Jiang Hai, you're right. Actually, if you want to recruit people to do these things, I may have a way. Looking at Jiang Hai, who was enjoying in front of her, Azalina said slowly, Oh, tell me about it. Hearing that she had a way, Jiang Hai was also a little surprised. As you know, I came from that organization. Although I escaped, now that I have your protection, no one dares to find trouble with me. As far as I know, there are many girls like me in that organization. Originally, they were trained for assassination, espionage, and other missions, but now the organization's situation is not very good. They want to sell these girls. If you are interested, you can buy some. I can guarantee their loyalty, including their souls and bodies, and I can help you solve the problem that is troubling you now. Seeing that Jiang Hai was a little moved, Azalina slowly said. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai, to be honest, was a little tempted. But considering that there were too many women around him, he couldn't help but frown. These were all very troublesome things. Don't worry, they are all the most professionally trained. They won't give you any trouble, and it's okay if they don't live here. Otherwise, how can they help you collect the information you want? Looking at Jiang Hai's frown, Azalina had already guessed his thoughts and said directly. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai looked at her with some doubts. Ahem, I met people in the organization a few days ago. After listening to Jiang Hai's words, Azalina also explained the situation. Although Azalina had defected, she had always been worried that the people in the organization would not let her go. Therefore, she had been very careful to collect information about the organization. A few days ago, she found out that someone in the organization who was familiar with her had come to Boston for a mission. She went to meet her. Of course, the necessary concealment and disguise still existed. After meeting, the people on the other side knew of her existence and knew that she was under Jiang Hai. As for why the people in this organization did not kill her, it was mainly because this organization was Ulan's KGB, not Soviet Russia. Not to mention killing her, Soviet Russia could even kill Jiang Hai, but Ulan could not. They did not dare to provoke an American billionaire. So even if they knew that Azalina was in Jiang Hai's manor, they did not dare to do anything. They just pretended that there was no such person. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.